Oh, okay. I guess the credits didn't go. Oh my God, this streaming platform, I tell you, I have no idea what's wrong with it. All right. Hold on. Let's see if I can fix that for a second. That is again, very weird. Uh, no, where I am, everything has disappeared. Okay. Well, hey, I guess there's no intro music or anything. So credits today. Um, again, weird. Sorry, kids and cubs. All right. Uh, just give me a couple of seconds, and then I guess I'll uh, have to try and see if I can clip this out at some point. Oh well. Good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 856 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Wednesday, March 4th, 2026, and it's a bit of a grayish day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the eager beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corbin Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and Cubs, how is your mental health today? Mine doing better, even though I have started the day off completely thrown, given the fact that the show I programmed yesterday did not properly connect. And now that I've created a second link for it to properly connect, my opening credits are actually not loaded in for some reason. Once again, a new issue with the streaming platform. That seems to be that there's a daily new issue with this streaming platform ever since we got it for ourselves rather than with the network we were formerly associated with. Um, Again, we're going to have to call Restream and ask what the heck. It's a little frustrating for the streaming platform to not be reliable as it used to be, especially considering how much we paid. But again, we're going to have to check into that. So I am so sorry for the very odd and awkward start to the show. Um, other than that, other than being a little thrown, my mental health is pretty good. I actually got a good night's sleep last night, which is really nice. Except that when I woke up this morning, rather than usually when I wake up, I'm up instantly, and today was one of those. Yeah, you could roll over and get an hour more if you wanted to. Your body would like that, and but obviously, damn fam time is also very important. So I wanted to be. I did my best to be on time this morning. I pre-programmed everything, and I was up and ready to start at 7:30, and then I noticed everything was not okay. So I apologize. Despite my best efforts, I just can't seem to make it happen for some reason. Um, but hey, we move on. Other than that, doing pretty well actually. Was on the curling ice again yesterday, and played significantly better than I played on the first day. Still not as reliable as I normally am, but we did manage, thanks to an excellent last two shots from our skip, to save a match that was about to get away from us and ended it up with a tie against a team that for some reason seems to have our number. Every time or at least my number particularly, because I play against this guy in several leagues, and every time I do, for some reason, oddly enough, he was the skip I played against on Monday with his Monday team, when we got massacred and we couldn't even score a point. So I was like, oh God, again, 2 nights in a row, 2 days in a row. But this one we emerged, we got a tie out of this one. That's feeling a little better. And I did make a couple of shots. A couple of shots. I made more than a couple of shots, but I still not best. I'd say maybe curled about 60% instead of my usual about 80 to 85. So yeah, I'm, but it's better than curling 15%. Which was the day before. Ugh, that's a game best soon forgotten. It's a good thing that a short memory is a very, very important tool in sports. That's all I will say. All right, kids and cubs. There is a lot that has gone on today. Yes, I see that, kids and the cubs. You're talking curling as well, talking about Team PEI here at the Briar, who I think only has 3 players. And there was lots of talk about that, the curling club too. It's like, really? They couldn't find, like, there was nobody else on the island that was available, ready to go? Oh, well, uh, you know, that happens. Yeah, well, happens. I mean, it shouldn't happen really, but, PEI is, uh, they're making the best out of bad situation, let's put it that way. Oh, Kit Jillian says, "YouTube keeps freezing the intro transition on my feed." Very weird. Okay, interesting. I see you guys are talking about a lot of stuff that are going on in the world. I'm sure there's been a lot of developments with regard to what Iran is doing and what the United States is doing and what Israel is doing and all that kind of stuff. And we're not going to touch upon that too much today because, as predicted, kits and cubs, the Prime Minister, Wilston Sidney, did take time to take questions from the media, as I probably as I suspected yesterday would be the case. It wasn't going to happen in India, principally because there were going to be potentially embarrassing issues asked about the India question there, and Modi very rarely um, allows for that anyway. And I believe Kid Bucky might be able to confirm. Oh, thank you for the compliment. Kid Bucky, really digging my earrings. Those are they're actually a gift from my Beaver sweetie, and they were his late mother's earrings actually. Um, yes, he's uh, gifted them to me, and I actually have a little box right here. And I do the show. I put them in before I do the show, and I take them out immediately after, so I do not risk losing them. Because every time I have a pair of earrings like this that are, I guess, sort of pendant earrings, I guess you would call them, and it's the winter for some reason, the end of the back of the end in it here gets hooked in my scarf, and I always end up losing one somewhere along the way. And I really do not want to lose these ones. So they go in and they go out. Although, hope he's not listening. Confession: I forgot to take them out last night, and I got to the curling rink and I realized yesterday evening that I still had them on. So I did not use my scarf on the way home. And as soon as the match was over, I went back to the bathroom and made sure they were both there. And then I got home and I put them in the box right away. So yeah, but yeah, that's the story behind these earrings, kids and cubs. Let's see. Prime Minister, as I mentioned, did break his silence, uh, perhaps strategic silence based on other events that have happened in the world, or confirmed as wise strategic silence based on other events that happened in the world, particularly in Spain. And we'll get to that today as well. Um, but yes, um, in India, like I said, it was probably not going to happen uh, because I believe Kit Bucky can tell us this for sure. But it is the hosting nation that makes the decisions with regard to the media and whether they're going to ask questions, even if, let's say, Prime Minister Carney was willing to take questions yesterday. If India is hosting the press conference and India is deciding no questions, I'm guessing there are no questions. But because we don't go into other people's countries and tell them how to do their press conferences. I would suspect is the rule and the protocol here. Um, and of course, with Iran, we had that original statement, and I got into some discussions with people yesterday, and I was like, well, because the prime minister now has a bit more to say with regard to it, and people were going, well, why did he say anything at all then? So, well, he has to say something, and in this case, the earlier that he said it probably ended up being the better, because usually you'd want to have a little more details before taking a statement. But in this case, given that the choice is one, say something, the first choice is say something or say nothing. And if you say nothing, you create a vacuum, and well, nature abhors a vacuum and people like to fill it. And therefore, people can start attributing motive to you as if it's a fact, because as if they know your mind and are able to read it, right? And so either he approves because there's a proverb in French. I'm not sure if it translates into English. But qui ne dit mot consent. He who says not a word consents. Right. So is the silent, tacit consent for what the United States is doing, but he just doesn't have the courage to say it. And well, you can see how various media entities, based on particularly those who don't um, adhere to the strictest of journalistic standards, let's put it that way, could run with that and create their own narrative. And if he says something, well, then every single word will be parsed, or people will, bad faith, look at that statement and try to insert or omit words of their own to or project what they think the prime minister should have said into it, and then analyze what is lacking, and then criticize for what is in it or what's not in it, or what people really wanted to be in it, or terms that may not be as clear, because the prime minister did not explicitly say, I stand against these strikes, therefore he must support them. That type of stuff. We've seen a lot of that narrative, rather than just sticking to the words of the statement specifically, and only the words of the statement. And then for the things that were not explicitly clear or not in it, asking the questions, why was this not in it? Rather than just saying, oh, this was not in it, so therefore it must mean that, right? There's a lot of filling the blanks in this case with what certain people wish slash want slash need to be there for what they say next to work. And so you always have to be careful when, again, especially in the hot takes, because a lot of the hot takes immediately after, particularly when there's not a lot of information out there and a lot of disinformation circulating and misinformation circulating, a lot of people, again, that do not adhere to the strictest of journalistic standards and do not follow the Associated Press or Canadian Press of just reporting the facts, will fill in the blanks. Absolutely. And that will create the take. And that's why I kept on warning people, do not take, uh, do not listen to any take that is out there and say, aha, this is the one against which I'm going to measure everything else, because the information just was not there in the public domain, especially to be able, especially for one to be able to say things confidently and smugly as if they were a fact, rather than speculating. Say, well, I think that this might mean, right? Rather than saying, "Oh, the prime minister has supported the strikes." I'm I'm still sitting here. I'm going, if the prime minister has supported the strikes explicitly, or supported the action explicitly, as the United States has put it on the table, that they are doing it, as Israel has put it on the table with the rationales that they're claiming for which they are doing it. Um, it would seem to me that the people who really want slash need slash wish the prime minister had said that would be presenting clips when they're doing their social medias of the prime minister saying that. And there are no clips of the prime minister saying that. You do with that information what you will. But you would think that if somebody had expressed support for the action as it is taking place, according to the rationales that have been given to us, and particularly very shifting rationales coming from the south of us, that there would be video of it, or a quote in the newspaper, that they would be gleefully sharing along with their opinion. But there are not. So therefore, that's usually a sign, if you're being media wise and politically wise, to maybe not take that wish casting stated as a fact, as an actual fact. Um, so yeah, we are, so the prime minister did have the press conference. He did say more, and we will get into that. The prime minister, while he's in Australia, will also be addressing Parliament today. So hopefully, there will be video of that, and we'll be able to check that out today to see what he's been saying in that context. It's interesting. Um, this is not his first invitation to speak to a session of parliament or a legislature since he's become prime minister, and that's usually an honor that isn't necessarily handed out all that easily. So I'm guessing it is positive fallout, if you can call it that, of what he said in Davos, and he's even being challenged on that from the media in terms of his consistency. And there was a good question asked, and he provided a rather diplomatic answer, actually. So we will be presenting that to you today. Um, but let's start with a couple of other things that have happened that might provide some color and context that could be interesting here. About 2 days ago, if you remember a while ago, we had a conversation with Kit Hugh, not the one that we just had this past Sunday about Iran, but about a little bit of about a month ago, when um, the United States went into Venezuela, and we basically were asking, how screwed are we? Because he went into Venezuela and was threatening Cuba, was also threatening Greenland, and was having these meetings with a map of North America behind him, with Canada draped in the U.S. colors, which we did not quite enjoy seeing that. And we talked about nuclear weapons and whether or not uh, Canada should be developing them. And Kit Hugh made a point that that might be a good idea, or the fact that some of our very close allies, the UK and France, happen to have nuclear weapons. And it might be a good idea to suggest that we could babysit a few on our territory for a while. And if that is an option, if we're talking about babysitting, I don't mind taking the 2 a.m. shift to make sure it gets its bottle. I'll help. I don't know what competency I have, but I can make sure that I can do the milk test on the wrist to make sure that it's warm, at least. Uh, well, talking about France and its nuclear stuff, according to The Guardian, it says here, France will increase the size of its nuclear arsenal for the first time in decades and significantly intensify nuclear weapons cooperation with 8 European allies, including the UK, as part of a major strengthening of its deterrence doctrine, Emmanuel Macron has said. Amid growing concern among European leaders about wavering U.S. commitments to help defend the continent, the French president said on Monday that Paris could deploy nuclear-capable Rafale fighter jets to partner countries such as Germany and Poland. And if you've been paying attention, Poland has been really, really itching to get in there. Of the European nations, Poland is like about the first. Like, can we go in now? Can we go get Russia now? Can we please can we now? We're ready. Uh, and now that I think that was even before Donald Tusk became the leader, and now that Donald Tusk is the leader, I'm sure he's just waiting for somebody to drop that flag. So let's go, because Poland is right on the border, and Russia has at least once had certain things enter, for a moment at least, Polish airspace, which did not make the people and the leadership in Poland very happy at all. Uh, so, yeah, interesting. The article continues, but there would be no sharing of decision making on the use of the country's nuclear weapons, he said, with, quote, the ultimate decision, the responsibility of the French president, and, quote, the definition of France's vital interests, also remaining sovereign. In a speech delivered from the Ile Longue nuclear submarine base in Brittany, Macron said, quote, a period of geopolitical upheaval fraught with risk meant France, the US's only nuclear power, the EU's only nuclear power, must strengthen its deterrent in the face of multiple threats. An upgrade of the country's arsenal was, quote, essential, Macron said, adding that he had decided to order an increase. France's estimated 290 nuclear warheads, a number that has not changed since 1992, constitute the world's fourth largest nuclear arsenal after Russia, the US, and China. Quote, my responsibility is to ensure that our deterrence maintains and will maintain in the future its assured destructive power, said the French president, who is commander in chief of the country's armed forces. He added that France would not stipulate how many nuclear warheads it had in its arsenal, nor how many it planned to add, and that the increase was needed to maintain it. Quote, this is not an arms race, he insisted. Mhm. Quote, it is essential that our adversaries or combination of adversaries cannot even glimpse the possibility of hitting France without the certainty of suffering damage they would not recover from. Macron cited Russia's war against Ukraine, which last month entered its fifth year, China's expanding military power, and recent changes in U.S. defense strategy as reasons why Europe had to take more direct responsibility for its own security. Announcing the, quote, gradual implementation of what I would call advanced deterrence, Macron said, France must now also consider our deterrence strategy deep within the European continent, with full respect for our sovereignty. Under unspecified circumstances, French, quote, strategic assets could be deployed in other European countries, he said, referring to France's nuclear capable Rafale jets. Talks on enhanced cooperation had already started with the UK, Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Greece, Sweden, and Denmark, he added, after which, upon reading that, I lifted my hand. And Canada? Canada, we're part of the SAFE program now. What about Canada? We would like a few. We would be okay with that. S'il vous plaît. Now this is interesting because a couple of days, uh, well, around the time, I guess the day before Macron announced this, um, there was somebody in Russia who had some interesting little comments to make. Um, wish I could remember the name of the person. It isn't Putin itself, but it's somebody that was. Ugh, God, I can't even remember. That's terrible. It's a name I hadn't heard before, but it seems that um, basically um, m- media was reporting it as being a horror threat against Europe. There we go. I found the article. Um, a guy named Sergei Karnikov, a former president and CEO of the Center for the National Interest, I guess in Russia, was on a talk show and said, Estonia is waging war against us. I think we should give it some thought that Mr. Trump unwittingly created political and psychological opportunities for us. He united our hands for our Supreme Commander in Chief to do whatever he finds appropriate to do for the nation's security. The host of the show continued issuing threats to Europe. Mr. Solovyov said, because this guy, I guess, was in conversation with a man named Vladimir Solovyov on the channel Solovyov Live. Solovyov. Okay, there we go. Vladimir Solovyov on a show called Solovyov Live. Um, and then, so the host responded, but we see what is happening. The only language Europe understands is the language of force, and only when the force is used against them. They saw that Oreshnik was used twice and decided they are protected in their little house. It's clearly time to strike their little house. Okay. Um, so basically, Russia is looking at what's going on as a permission slip for it to do whatever it wants to do in Europe. Now, of course, nobody had any surprise or this doesn't come as a shock, and I don't think that Russia was looking for this as a permission slip, doing that regardless. Just ask the Ukrainians. Just ask the people in Georgia. Just ask the people in Transnistria, in Moldova, to keep on being threatened. You know, Russia is not adverse to going in and just taking territory. And has shown that for quite a while. So they didn't really actually need a permission slip. So this is just a convenient opportunity. Well, this is basically France turning around and saying, "Oh yes, you want to wage your horror on Europe? Eat my croissant." The new model would allow France's strategic deterrent to be spread across the European continent to complicate the calculations of our adversaries, Macron said. The doctrine could also involve, quote, the conventional participation of allied forces in our nuclear activities, he added. Bruno Tetres, the deputy director of France's FRS think tank, said Macron's speech, quote, was the most significant update to French nuclear deterrence policy in 30 years and a major step forward. Donald Trump's rapprochement with Russia over the Ukraine war and his tougher posture towards the U.S.'s traditional transatlantic allies have shaken European governments, which have long relied on the U.S. for deterring political adversaries. Macron's long-planned speech was maintained despite the escalating conflict around Iran, because the violence in the Middle East shows the importance of France's power and independence to face down growing threats, a French official said. Macron has previously floated a mutualization of France's nuclear arsenal, including at last month's Munich Security Conference, at which he said a, quote, rearticulation was needed to reflect, quote, special cooperation and common security interests within Europe. Earlier this month, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said he had held, quote, initial talks with Macron on the nuclear issue. France and the UK also adopted a joint declaration in July on the coordination of both nations' nuclear forces. France and Germany said in a joint statement on Monday after Macron's speech that they had set up a, quote, high-ranking nuclear steering group as part of an arrangement they said would, quote, add to, not substitute for, NATO's nuclear deterrence. The two countries said they had agreed to take first concrete steps, including German conventional participation in French nuclear exercises and joint visits to strategic sites, as well as development of conventional capabilities with European partners. Now, with regard to that joint statement, I have something here with regard to it. I believe I actually have that joint statement here. Just need to find it in my on the show feed because I was in a discussion with someone who seemed to have a different reading of it than I did. And since we have Kit Hugh here in um, in the chat, he might be able to answer a question because, as the story says here, this is something that is in addition to what's going on in NATO and not there to replace it. So my reading of this is that this particular agreement um, does not include Canada because it's something that is outside of NATO, though probably consistent with NATO. And the person I was having an exchange with was insisting that this meant that Canada was included because this is something that was part of NATO. And I did not see it that way based on my reading of it, especially since it states that this is about something called the Treaty of Aachen, Aacchen here. So, whoops, I just found the thing and then it disappeared for a second. There it is. Joint Declaration of President Macron and Chancellor Merz. In the spirit of their close partnership as set out in Article 4 of the Treaty of Aachen, France and Germany have decided to enter into closer cooperation in the field of deterrence in response to the evolving threat landscape. France and Germany have established a high-ranking nuclear steering group that will act as a bilateral framework for the doctrinal dialogue and the coordination of strategic cooperation. including consultations regarding the appropriate mix of conventional missile defense and French nuclear capabilities. France and Germany have agreed to take first concrete steps beginning this year, including German conventional participation in French nuclear exercises and joint visits to strategic sites, as well as development of conventional capabilities with European partners. France and Germany will also increase their ability as Europeans to manage escalation beneath the nuclear threshold, in particular in the fields of early warning and air defense and deep precision strike. This Franco German cooperation is based on the shared understanding that the nuclear dimension of deterrence remains a cornerstone of European security, relying on U.S. extended deterrence, including U.S. nuclear weapons forward deployed to Europe, and on the independent strategic nuclear forces of France and the United Kingdom, which have a deterrent role of their own and contribute significantly to the overall security of the alliance. This Franco German cooperation will add to, not substitute for, NATO's nuclear deterrence and NATO's nuclear sharing agreements, to which Germany contributes and will continue to contribute. France and Germany will continue to comply with their obligations under international law, including the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. In light of their strong commitment to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty and Article 42, Paragraph 7 of the Treaty on European Union, Franco German cooperation aims at strengthening the systems of collective security both countries belong to. It aims at enhancing Europe's security as a whole. Special attention will be given to coordination with the United States, the United Kingdom, other allies, and NATO. So, again, I am reading this given that it's in the spirit of Article 4 of the Treaty of Action and not the agreement on NATO, that is, it states specifically that it is a bilateral framework as opposed to an organizational framework with regard to NATO, that it says specifically that this is Franco German cooperation, that it says specifically that it will add to, not substitute for NATO's nuclear deterrence, that this is an agreement that is specifically amongst them, that they're going to involve other people and they're going to make sure is coordinated with NATO. But this is not something in which Canada specifically is participating or covered by, right? Um, so, yes, this is specifically here as it mentions here, that yes, right, there is a link with U.S. extended deterrence and um, including U.S. nuclear weapons, but and it contributes again significantly to the overall security of the alliance. But they also have an obligation to ensure Europe's security in its own right, and this is specifically about that. So that is my reading of it. Um, Again, Kit Hugh, if you are in there, you can tell me if that is your understanding of it as well. Would definitely appreciate your thoughts on that, and hopefully I will see it across the screen because the things in the screen are going really quickly. You guys are talking a lot. Uh, so yeah, and they're actually things are scrolling so fast. I actually cannot read them to actually like, pick out something specifically that I could present on the screen here. You guys are very active in the chat today, and that is a wonderful thing. And now, hopefully, I can find my screen again. There we go. There I am. So, continuing on with what the article here is saying, Poland Prime Minister Donald Tusk said in a social media post that he was in talks with Paris and European allies on the French proposals, adding, quote, "We are arming up together with our friends so that our enemies will never dare to attack us." Sweden's Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson also confirmed Sweden's intention to take part in the discussions. Strengthening Europe's overall defense capability has not been as important since the Second World War as it is right now, he said. Kristersson also noted the talks would take place, quote, in dialogue also with the US and NATO, which Sweden joined in 2024. Quote, as long as Russia has these weapons and threatens its neighbors, democracies must be able to deter them, he said. So we have France basically saying we could or planning to deploy weapons or other things that would be needed to make sure that we can use our weapons in a better way uh, throughout Europe. We're not just going to hold them on our soil. There are 8 different nations that are willing to participate in that. And we no longer feel the need to keep the world updated on how many weapons we have or where they might be or that type of thing. Like said, Putin, you want to have your people go on TV and say, now that you have a permission slip to wage war or a war of horror or wage horror on Europe and maybe take down their little house or something like that. Um, Here, um, you might want to take a bite out of this baguette. Very interesting move. And the part that I find interesting is that Europe no longer, like I said, France no longer feels the need to keep the world abreast of just how many weapons it has now. And that, if we're talking about, or what it's doing with its program, so if we're seeing that, maybe that means that France might somewhat, as discreetly as is possible, ship a few to Canada and not feel the need to tell anybody that it has, which would be, um, I'd be okay with that. I would be okay with that. But yeah, that this is a major change, biggest update to France's nuclear doctrine in about 30 years. I'm just going to check that Kit Hugh has commented on that at all, and I do not see anything as of yet. Okay, it's possible I missed it. Um, so that's the first thing. Then the second thing that happened is in Spain. Now, Spain is a bit like Canada in terms was one of the nations that the United States was considering a bit of a laggard in terms of its contributions to NATO. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I would have to look at that again. I believe that Spain also is one of the nations that didn't uh, get on board um, with the pledge to commit 5% to NATO. Yeah, exactly it. Looking at the Guardian here, this is from, I believe, June 19th of last year, says Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has rejected NATO's proposal for member states to increase their defense spending to 5% of their GDP, saying the idea would, quote, not only be unreasonable, but also counterproductive. Sanchez said that he was not seeking to complicate next week's NATO, well, at the time in June, the NATO summit meeting in the NATO summit in the Hague, but he wanted there to be, quote, a more flexible formula that would either make the target optional or allow Spain to opt out. Um, in a letter to the Secretary General of NATO at the time, Sanchez questioned the possible consequences of such a rise, saying it would be incompatible with Spain's welfare state and its vision of the world. Quote, committing to a 5% target would not only be unreasonable, but also counterproductive because it would move Spain further away from optimal spending and would hinder the EU's ongoing efforts to strengthen its security and defense ecosystem. It is the legitimate right of every government to decide whether or not they are willing to make those sacrifices. As a sovereign ally, we choose not to. It says here that at the time in June, Spain currently lagged, or can Spain lagged well behind other Western nations by dedicating only about 1.3% of its GDP to defense spending, well short of the current NATO target of 2%, and it had suggested a target of 2.1%. 2 months prior to that, in June, Sanchez had announced a 10.5 billion euro, quote, industrial and technological plan for security and defense to help Spain hit the 2% target by the end of the year, saying had become obvious. Quote, only Europe will know how to protect Europe from now on. asked for comment about Spain's request. A NATO official at the time told Reuters discussions among allies on a new defense investment plan are ongoing. So yes, that was the case. So Spain already not on board and necessarily in Trump's good books because they were just not ready to do what it is that he asked simply because he asked. And that was a bit our position at first, too. If you remember, Prime Minister Trudeau had set a target for reaching 2% that was going to be substantially in the future. And then I think had to change that a little bit. And then eventually we got on to the 5% number. Because I guess through discussions, there was a division of that 5%. There was 3.5% that was for specific defense stuff, and then 1.5% that was other types of infrastructure that a nation could do that could be dual purpose. For example, that could serve a military purpose, but something else, or that could help with that. So, for example, and this is something that the prime minister has worked into his strategy here when he's talking about, boosting our defense and spending more of our defense money outside of the United States and doing things like maybe a deep sea port in the Arctic that would, not only be able to serve for commercial purposes, but also defense purposes. So lots of a dual purpose type stuff. And if that's going to count in the 1.5%, then we're pretty much close to already there. We're already on track to being there with things that we already have planned. So it's not going to be necessarily additional money coming out of our budget that would go to social programs. That's being diverted because that money is already intended to be spent for commercial purposes. But there are things that we can do with that we can factor it in or count it in as a part of that 5%. Spain, then the Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, made an announcement yesterday that it doesn't seem to approve of what the United States is doing, but not only doesn't it not approve, it is not willing to be helpful in the sense of allowing the U.S. to use its installations in Spain as a point from which it can pursue what it is that it is doing in Iran. So that is interesting. According to Reuters, whoops, I have no idea what's going on here. Hold on. Just a little glitch. Let's see if I can get, nope, that's not working. Okay. According to Reuters, it says that U.S. aircraft have left Spain after the government said bases cannot be used in Iran. Unfortunately, I cannot bring up the article for you, so I'm going to try and pick it up somewhere else here. Sorry. There we go. Let's go to the BBC. Danielle Kay, business reporter. U.S. President. Oh no, that's his. That's Trump's. There we go. Go to political EU. This is Aitor Hernandez Morales, the journalist. The U.S. pulled its warplanes from Spanish bases after Madrid prohibited their use against Iran, Spanish Defense Minister Margarita Robles said today. Missions involving the bases must operate within the framework of international law. That's a quote. The minister said during a press conference at the Armilla Air Base, adding that military installations on Spanish territory would be prohibited from, quote, providing support except if it is necessary from a humanitarian perspective. Flight tracking website Flight Radar 24 recorded over a dozen U.S. aircraft, among them several Boeing KC-135 aerial refueling tankers, leaving the Morón de la Frontera and Rota air bases this weekend, with 7 deploying to Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Robles said the U.S. had, quote, likely made those moves because they knew the aircraft could not operate from Spain. A 1953 agreement with the U.S. gives Madrid a say over how American forces stationed on its territory are used. Robles said that the bases had not participated in last Saturday's attack on Iran and would not be used for, quote, maintenance and support operations. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is the main EU leader condemning Washington's attack on Iran, which he described as a, quote, violation of international law. Robles said that Madrid's policy on the use of Spanish bases did not reflect any support for the Islamist regime in Tehran, which she characterized as, quote, terrible and dictatorial. But she added, the solution can never be the use of violence. Thus, bringing to light something that I keep on saying is that because there's again a lot of people black and white, and it's like you got to support this or else. And it's like no, it is not inconsistent for the world to want karmic justice to happen in Iran for all the terrible things that Iran has done to the world and to its people, or at least the leadership of Iran, and at the same time to want that action, that justice, to be delivered in accordance with international law. Those two thoughts can be held in a head at the same time. So there's no situation unless you allow the US and Israel to do whatever they want to do, you stand with Tehran. No, that's not exactly how it works. Um, so yeah, Spain saying nada por favor or nada gracias. No, thank you. Not on our soil. We will not be doing that. This prompted a reaction from the United States, and this is where maybe Canada's position and where the Prime Minister saying what he did very strategically in his initial statement that came out really early. And again, we were wondering, if it might have been too early because it seemed to have come out before we had news about the school. But in this case, it would appear that coming out with a very early statement before more poop hit the fan and there was more to react to in a statement might have been a smart idea in this case. Just come out, don't create a vacuum. You have to say something. Pick the thing that you say, which was a statement on the situation in the Middle East, not on the strikes of Iran, and a document that expressed support in a similar way to when Mark Carney called the President of the United States transformational, stating that they support action to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon, and also something about, if I remember correctly, not being so much of a threat. Let me just make sure, and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. Those are very, very big, broad statements, and that's why I'm suggesting that there's a lot of projection, because what preventing Iran from, or the Iranian regime from threatening international peace and security looks like to one person that may be really on the right and a war hawk means something completely different from what it means to someone that might be on the further left and is a much more of a pacifist. Between someone who wants intervention and someone that wants us to stand on a podium and wag our finger at the United States and then go out and say, this is a violation of international law. Yeah, and because that's how the United States and Israel is treating this. I mean, I believe both of them are not even signed on to the two international courts. Right. So, I mean, yeah, there's international law, and then there's who decides to abide by it and cares about it. And the two main protagonists, at least, well, I guess I'm going to guess the three main protagonists are not big subscribers to adhering to international law. Neither Iran, Israel, or the United States. They don't want to sign on to it because they don't want to be bound by it. right? So, I mean, we can stand up and cry, "This is a violation of international law," all we want. And I guess some people say it deserves to be said or it needs to be said. And okay, I can accept that. But but then what? Are we going to go out and enforce it? Right? Who enforces it? There's some limits here in the system. And the prime minister, in his remarks, happened to point to that. And again, we will bring you that in a moment. So yeah, um, we said what we said very early on, and then didn't make any other comments for a while. And I've been mentioning on the show that one of the reasons for this might be that because the prime minister's first duty is to protect Canadian interests and then take positions on world affairs, um, positions that are taken by the government of Canada, because these are positions when the prime minister takes a position. It's not only my position as prime minister, or my position as leader of the Liberal Party. It's my position as the leader of the government of Canada. He speaks on behalf of the government of Canada in these instances, right? So this is the word of our nation, not just him. We often forget that, right? So Prime Minister Mark Carney said, Mark Carney said, Mark Carney said, yes, but he's saying it as Canada, not just as Mark Carney. So what he personally believes, he might be at home talking to his wife, God, I wish I could just go in there and slap him, right? But as government of Canada, can the government of Canada stand up and say, we should be slapping you? Those are two different realities. So, in his duty to protect Canadian interests first, given that we have a United States that is very belligerent and extremely trigger happy, has dropped bombs on 7 or 8 nations within since Trump has become a leader, has threatened to annex us, has threatened to destroy our economy, and is doing a lot to try to make that happen. Um, and as we've seen right after the Davos speech, you made that Davos speech, more tariffs for everyone. Ah, kind of reacts that way. That maybe standing up onto a podium and going, Trump, you're bad, would not necessarily be in our national interest. Perhaps. Well, Spain not participating in the 5% of NATO and saying you cannot use uh, the bases here for that type of purpose. Please take your planes and go. Well, uh, Trump didn't take to that very well and threatened Spain uh, with cutting off trade. And it was pretty much an instant reaction. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened, and this is Danielle Kay of the BBC. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to halt all trade with Spain after the country barred the U.S. from using its military bases as part of its operation in Iran. In comments at the White House, Trump said Spain had, quote, been terrible and suggested, we're going to cut off all trade. We don't want anything to do with Spain, he told reporters. You didn't indulge me, and I didn't get my way, so I'm taking all my marbles and I'm going home. Blah. Pretty much. The toddler had another tantrum. Somebody, please change his diaper. It is unclear whether the Trump administration will follow through on the threat or how officials would move to block trade with a European member state. Trump's comments add to existing tensions between the two countries, including over the Spanish government's resistance to Trump's demand for NATO allies to raise their defense spending. Yeah, I believe there was a moment where Trump said, yeah, an extra 10% on you, Canada. And I don't think that ever materialized. Right? I could tomorrow or today, even better, stop everything having to do with Spain. All business having to do with Spain, Trump said on Tuesday. Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent both claimed that the U.S. can legally place an embargo on products imported from Spain. But U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer was non-committal when asked by the president for his view on the plan. Quote, "We're going to talk about it with you," Greer said. "You have the strong power that the Supreme Court clarified, and we know you can use it, and if you need to use it to assure national and economic security, we'll do it." The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the trade threat. On Tuesday, Trump also expressed frustration with the Spanish government for refusing to increase its defense spending to 5% of its gross domestic product, in contrast to many other European countries that have acquiesced. Trump has previously suggested that Spain should face economic punishments. The European Union allows goods to move freely between the 27 countries in the economic bloc, which would complicate any bid to impose trade restrictions on a single member state. The Spanish government said that if the U.S. administration wants to review its trade relationships with Spain, it must respect the autonomy of private companies, international law, and bilateral agreements between the EU and the U.S. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who met Trump on Tuesday, said he told the president that Spain is part of the EU and that any trade deals with the bloc must include Spain. In 2025, the U.S. exported roughly $26 billion worth of goods to Spain, and imports from the country amounted to about $21 billion, according to data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Spain's top exports to the U.S. include pharmaceutical products and olive oil. And this is a difference. A lot of people might be looking at Spain and go, yeah, yeah, Spain, Canada, you should be doing the same thing. Um, Trade between the United States and Canada, as you know, we're the United States is our number one trading partner, and we do nearly $1 trillion worth of trade. I believe it is with the United States per year. I believe it was like 900 and something billion. If I remember correctly, I'm just going to take a little look at that here, just very quickly. As of early March 2026, I didn't ask the value of the Canadian dollar. I asked the dollar the value of trade. Computers sometimes. Canada-US trade is one of the world's largest, with over $1 trillion Canadian in annual goods and services exchanged. There you go. So 1 trillion versus 26 billion. The, the trade relationships are nowhere near the same. In addition, um, whereas the United States clearly is our number one trading partner, um, the United States is Spain's sixth trading partner. And for the other way around, Spain is the United States' 22nd largest trading partner. So Spain, oh my God, you're going to cut trade off with us. Oh, gee, whatever will we do? However, will we replace $26 billion? Oh, gee, that's going to be tough. Dripping in stark font, of course, right? I mean, size of Spain's economy is the 12th or 15th largest in the world and sixth in Europe, with a nominal GDP estimated at approximately $1.89 trillion. $26 billion is probably a rounding error. So I'm sure Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez will be kept up at night wondering however Spain is going to get by without trade from the United States, should the Trump decide to act on that. So they're in a slightly different position than we are as well, to be able to say, stand up and wag the finger and say, no, you cannot use our air bases. Now, fortunately, this is one area where geographical proximity to the United States is an advantage to Canada. There are no U.S. bases in Canada, so that request would never come for us. Therefore, we would never have to deny that. However, there is talk of people wondering what would happen if the United States, because Iran is attacking U.S. military installations in the Middle East, what if the United States turns around and says, well, I'm invoking Article 5? Would that drag us into it? I'm hoping that we would say, I think that applies only in situations where you don't start the war. If you start the war and then people start acting to defend themselves, um, that's not Article 5. Sorry, you're on your own. I don't know if we would have the luxury of saying that, but that is something that people are indeed wondering about. What happens if the United States suddenly decides Article 5, you guys now need to help. We're dragging you in. Uh, boy, Kit Uncover the News says that Goldman Sachs warns that oil could rise to $100 a barrel if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Oh, interesting. Okay. It's already hitting close to $75 a barrel, I think. Oh, no, dropped a little bit today. It was at over $74 dollars yesterday, but today there's actually, at least at the moment, a little bit of a drop. Not a lot, less than 1%. But yeah, it hit a peak of $74.48 uh, at some point. So let's hope that yeah, that there's a little bit of a drop in that because there's been a a big spike year to date. The price of oil, crude oil, is up 29.3% based on everything that's been going on, and up 17.24% in the last month. Brent is up 20.18% in the last month and up 33% this year. Gasoline, Kit Hugh was talking about on our Sunday special, is up about 45% year to date and over 29% this month. Um, Heating oil up 50% to year to date and 33% this month. The TTF gas, which is the Dutch one, up 83% year to date and 53% this month. UK gas up 82% year to date and up 66% this month. This is not good. German gas up 83% year to date and 65% this month. Gold up 19% year to date and 8% this month. Silver up 19% year to date and greater than 19%, close to 20% this month. Um, the market right here as well, kits and cubs, because if the price of oil and price of gasoline, price of oil is going up like that, I'm calling it right now. When inflation numbers start to come up and show that inflation is going up because the price of gas and oil has gone up, expect Pierre to blame all this on Mark Carney's policies when it's really what this is going on over here right now. Just preparing it, like, right? We know what the conservative leader does, right? Everything is the liberals' fault or Mark Carney's fault. So when the price of gas does go up and it starts reflecting in oil and it starts reflecting in the insurance, in the inflation numbers, just know that today, this is what's happening. Year to date, this is what's happening here. It's not Mark Carney's policies. It's this foolish excursion by the United States. All right. Um, Getting back to the article here. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, currently one of Europe's few left-leaning leaders, on Sunday called the U.S. and Israel's attacks on Iran a, quote, an unjustified, dangerous military intervention in violation of international law. Officials in Madrid said they would bar the U.S. from using military bases in southern Spain as part of the operation, arguing that doing so would violate the United Nations Charter. Trump also criticized the UK for being, quote, very uncooperative with his push to use military bases to attack Iran, but he did not make an explicit threat to impose trade restrictions on the country. Well, according to the BBC, Guy Hedgeco and Paul Kirby, about 2 hours ago now, had a response. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has delivered a strong rebuttal to U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to end trade with Spain by restating his opposition to war and what he called, quote, the breakdown of international law. In a 10-minute televised address, Sanchez reflected on the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, as well as the Iraq War more than 20 years ago, and said the Spanish government's position could be summed up as, quote, no to war. Trump threatened to impose a full trade embargo on Spain in response to Madrid's refusal to allow the U.S. to use the jointly run bases at Moron and Rotafour for strikes on Iran. Quote, Spain has been terrible, Trump said during a meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz on Tuesday. We're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain, he added. Merz said later he had told Trump very clearly that he could not conclude a separate trade agreement with Germany or all of Europe, but not with Spain. Mm, Well played, sir. In response to the U.S. economic threat, the Élysée Palace said French President Emmanuel Macron had conveyed his, quote, solidarity with Spain during a phone conversation with Sanchez on Wednesday. European Council President Antonio Costa also said he had spoken to the Spanish leader, quote, to express the EU's full solidarity. Trump accused Spain on Tuesday of being, quote, a terrible partner in NATO for failing to increase its defense budget in line with the target of 5% of economic output. Earlier this year, Sanchez drew Trump's anger by speaking out against the U.S. military incursion into Venezuela. In his televised address from the Prime Minister's Madrid residence at La Moncloa? Yes. Prime Minister's Madrid residence at La Moncloa on Wednesday, Sanchez said the government was studying economic measures to counter the impact of the conflict on Spaniards, although he avoided directly referring to Trump's trade threat. Quote, the question is not if we are on the side of the Ayatollahs. Nobody is. The question is whether we are in favor of peace and international legality. You cannot answer one illegality with another, because that is how the great catastrophes of humanity begin. Boom. Let me repeat that. You cannot answer one illegality with another, because that is how the great catastrophes of humanity begin. And that's why it is not inconsistent to be in support of karmic justice for everything that the regime in Iran has done, while insisting that that justice be delivered in accordance with international law, and why it is that insisting on that does not mean that you must then support Tehran. Spain's socialist prime minister explained that the government's position was comparable to its stance on Ukraine and Gaza. Sanchez has been vociferous critic of Israel's military response to the Hamas attacks in 2023. Spain has been among Europe's most outspoken governments on Gaza, describing Israel's action there as, quote, genocide, and acknowledging a Palestinian state before many other EU members did. That position was in step with his coalition partners to his left, and broadly speaking, with Spanish attitudes to the Middle East. Looking back to the invasion of Iraq in 2003, which he said had failed to achieve its goals and had made life worse for ordinary people, he warned that the attacks on Iran could have a similar economic impact for millions. And I believe the data I saw is that Iran's population, I think, is like 3 times the population of Iraq and 3 times the population of Afghanistan. So, so much more turmoil, chaos, and devastation could be happening there. His reference to the Iraq invasion will connect with many Spanish voters. Spain's support at the time for the Conservative People's Party government was deeply unpopular and triggered mass anti-war protests. Many believe it also laid the groundwork for the Socialist Party's surprise election victory in March 2004, days after Madrid was hit by deadly jihadist bombings. Sanchez reminded Spaniards of the, quote, the Azores trio, then of U.S. President George W. Bush, the U.K.'s Tony Blair, and Spanish conservative leader Jose Maria Aznar, who had met on a Spanish base in the region days before the Iraq invasion. He said they had handed Europeans the gift of a more insecure world and worse life. The Spanish leader's stance contrasts strongly with that of Merz, who told German TV on Tuesday The Spanish leader's stance contrasts strongly with that of Merz, who told German TV on Tuesday regime change in Iran would leave the world, quote, a little better off, although he also said that was not without risk and we would also have to bear the consequences. Unlike Spain's fellow NATO allies, the UK, France, and Greece, it is not yet committed to any military involvement in response to the war. The Spanish Prime Minister said he wanted to express the solidarity of the Spanish people with countries that had been illegally attacked by the Iranian regime. Aside from the fierce criticism Sanchez is facing from the US, his coalition government has faced months of enormous political pressure, generating constant speculation that its collapse could be imminent. It has been struggling to maintain its parliamentary majority, which includes an array of left-wing and regional nationalist parties. Allegations of corruption against several of his allies and inner circle have severely weakened his position. In Spain's deeply polarized politics, much of the support for Sanchez is driven as much by concerns about the country's right and far right as it is by endorsement of his leadership and policies. Standing up to the US president may have electoral benefits for the socialist leader, because everything is politics and all politics are local. A recent poll by the CIS Research Institute found that 77% of Spaniards had a bad or very bad opinion of Trump, suggesting that even many right wing voters might back Sanchez on this issue. However, there is now uncertainty in Spain over whether Trump's threats will translate into some form of economic reprisals, and many Spaniards will be watching this drama nervously. So, uh, we have France changing its nuclear policy. Um, we have Spain saying you can't use your bases on our soil. And we have Trump instantly threatening some form of retaliation, which brings us back to Canada. And uh, might explain, if we have a prime minister who is putting Canadian interests first, why it is he made that initial statement very early so that there was less to react to. Because when the bombs started dropping, one could probably foresee that every single extra minute that this goes on could make things so much worse and could give you so much more to have to react to. Then chose to stay quiet for a few days. Um, the fact that he was in India and the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Modi, doesn't really like to take questions at all, and almost rarely never does, almost doesn't even make these types of public appearances to do these types of press conferences. Um, Certainly was very convenient for the prime minister in making it such that he didn't have to take questions, but nothing would have stopped him from having his own thing on the side where he could have taken questions, but he decided to just go along with that. And now that he is in Sydney, where he's not in India and doesn't have to stand next to Modi when being asked very uncomfortable questions about our relationship with India and India's alleged use of transnational repression techniques and willingness to even potentially commit extrajudicial killings on the home soil of citizens of other nations in order to achieve its ends. Um, yeah, uh, from the safety of a fellow Commonwealth country, then maybe it would be time for questions. And of course, it was. Um, I will bring this up. The first thing that the prime minister did, of course, was make a statement. Uh, and there's how do you put it? Um, the statement is consistent with what he has said before, but there is also um, more to the statement because, of course, there's been some extra days now. More stuff has happened. Other nations have indeed come out and taken positions. Um, and therefore, um, the first statement, while very diplomatic and having chosen words carefully to protect our interests, uh, is, and I think it was a fair criticism, insufficient. Because, how would I put it? Maybe not insufficient at the time, given that hostilities had just started, but given that everybody, um, you know, with a quarter of a brain here could see where this was going, insufficient for what we knew was to come. So more has indeed happened. So the prime minister does have to say more. He wouldn't be able to get away today with the statement he put out very early on, because now, with um, Iran hitting targets in other Gulf states, trying to create more chaos there, with Hezbollah entering into the fray on behalf of Iran, with Iran, uh, of course, responding by launching missiles in Israel as well, um, with at least six U.S. service members now dead. Um, and the United States vowing that this will not be done like in a day or two, but maybe 5 or 6 weeks now, and could go on longer, with the United States saying yes at the time. 3 service members died, that there probably would be more. Um, More has to be said. That's inescapable. So here we have for you, kits and cubs, the statement of the Prime Minister with regard to what's going on. A lot of the things in the initial statement are going to be repeated, but it is important to pay attention to what is new and what is added in this statement. So, can I do it like this? Maybe I can do it like this. It might. Let me know, kits and cubs, if you prefer it in the box with me there. So if I stop it, I can keep commenting, or if you would just like the full screen here of the Prime Minister. All right, so let's start it here for you. Okay, wow, you guys are really chatting. The thing is just like, it's scrolling up so fast that it's a blur. I'm going to have a lot to read when the show's over. Okay, here we go, kits and cubs.
Canada has long seen Iran as the principal source of instability and terror.
Let me know, kits and cubs, because I may have made a mistake here, if you actually heard that bit. Because I just realized that my speakers were set to external speakers here and not there. So I'm just going to do that. There we go. That's better, because I don't think that my output was going through the system here. So let me just rewind that for you for just a bit. There we go. And let's try that again.
Canada has long seen Iran as the principal source of instability and terror in the Middle East. The regime and its proxies have murdered hundreds, including Canadian civilians, and caused untold suffering for millions of people in the Middle East and beyond. Despite more than 2 decades of negotiations and diplomatic efforts, Iran has not dismantled its nuclear program nor halted its enrichment activities. Canada has long supported the imperative of neutralizing this grave global threat. Canada stands with the Iranian people in their long and courageous struggle against the regime's oppressive rule, which is why we support efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. Because Canada is taking the world as it is, not passively waiting for a world we wish to be. We do, however, take this position with regret, because the current conflict is another example of the failure of the international order. Despite decades of UN Security Council resolutions, the tireless work of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the succession of sanctions and diplomatic frameworks, Iran's nuclear threat remains. And now, the United States and Israel have acted without engaging the United Nations or consulting allies, including Canada. So where to from here, with a rapidly spreading conflict and growing threats to civilian life? Canada reaffirms that international law binds all belligerents. We condemn the strikes carried out by Iran on civilians and civilian infrastructure across the Middle East. And we implore all parties, including the United States and Israel, to respect the rules of international engagement. Canada calls for a rapid de-escalation of hostilities and is prepared to assist in achieving this goal. Resolution of this crisis will require commitment to a broader political solution. And diplomatic engagement is essential to avoid a wider and deeper conflict. Innocent civilians must be protected, and all parties must commit to finding enduring agreements to end both nuclear proliferation and terrorist extremism. Canada will pursue this approach with like-minded countries and participants in the conflict. And now briefly, allow me to return to our work in this region. J'arrive ici de Mumbai et de New Delhi, où j'ai rencontré le Premier ministre Modi.
So that
Ensemble,
is the overall statement there. He then goes on in that press conference, the statement part of the press conference, to talk about a little bit of the achievements in India and what it is that he is there to do in Australia. But in this statement, things that are new that he's adding onto it. Number one, that this is a position he has taken with regret. And regret because the current situation is an indication that this is a failure of the international order. That the order that we had, that we relied upon, has been wholly ineffective in bringing about a solution to this that would not result in this type of situation that we have now. Makes a point of stating that both the U.S. and Israel engaged in this operation without consulting allies. They freelanced. This also could be used, I would assume, if the United States turned around and said Article 5, and said, well, you didn't ask NATO to support this when you went in. Not our circus, not our monkeys. Sorry. If you wanted Article 5 assistance, then you probably should have done it in accordance with international law as an international treaty organization. We cannot invoke one of our articles to defend you from the consequences of you having pursued military action on another nation in violation of international law. That's not what we're here for. That could be the response. And maybe that is why it hasn't been invoked yet. Because the vibe that they are getting from France and from Spain, at least right now, and other nations that are pointing that out, is you can ask, but you're going to be told to go pound sand on an international stage. And maybe you don't want that visual of one of you asking us to do this, and 27 of us, each in our own respective right, one after another, or 26 of us, or however many there are in NATO. Sorry, I think I'm counting the nations of the EU here, not necessarily NATO, telling you to go pound sand. That would probably not be a video that you would like happening over and over and over and over and over again. Prime Minister reaffirms that international law binds all belligerents, makes the call for de-escalation that our European partners had already made, and indicates a willingness to help with that. I don't know really in what capacity we could, but willingness to help with that, and talks about the need for increased diplomatic engagement in order to stop the proliferation of the conflict. In addition to that, the Minister of Global Affairs has indicated several times now that the U.S. Did not call us, did not ask us to participate. We had no participation in the planning, in the execution of this, and therefore we will not be putting boots on the ground with regard to this. In addition, when it comes to the rationale for all of this, Donald Trump specifically is in a very interesting situation because according to Reuters, and this is from March 1st, here, the journalists Phil Stewart and Humaira Pamuk. Trump administration officials acknowledged in closed-door briefings with congressional staff on Sunday that there was no intelligence suggesting Iran planned to attack U.S. forces first, two people familiar with the matter said. The United States and Israel launched their most ambitious attacks on Iran in decades on Saturday, killing Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, sinking Iranian warships, and hitting more than 1,000 targets so far, officials say. But Sunday's remarks to Congress appeared to undercut one of the key arguments for the war made by senior administration officials. They told reporters the day before that President Donald Trump decided to launch the attacks in part because of indicators that Iranians might strike U.S. forces in the Middle East, quote, perhaps preemptively. Trump, one of the officials said, was not going to, quote, sit back and allow American forces in the region to absorb attacks. Pentagon officials briefed Democratic and Republican staff of several national security concerns in both the Senate and the House of Representatives for more than 90 minutes on the unfolding U.S. attack in Iran, White House spokesperson Dylan Johnson said earlier. In the briefings, administration officials emphasized that Iran's ballistic missiles and proxy forces in the region posed an imminent threat to U.S. interests, but there was no intelligence about Tehran attacking U.S. forces first, the two sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, told Reuters. Trump said the attack, which is expected to run for weeks, aimed to ensure Iran could not have a nuclear weapon, contain its missile program, and eliminate threats to the United States and its allies. He has urged Iranians to rise up and topple the government, but as we noted, has not given Iranians any way to do so. Hasn't even taken any action to turn on the internet, and has not given officials in Iran, if they wanted to, any path to surrender or laying down their weapons that Trump would recognize. In fact, because the Iranians actually urging of Iranians to rise up and topple the government, the message didn't actually get to them. And given that he screwed up Voice of America, well, that avenue of getting that message to them too is also kind of gone. Still, Democrats have accused Trump of waging, quote, a war of choice and have taken aim at his arguments for abandoning peace talks that mediator Oman said still held promise. Trump has argued without presenting evidence that Iran was on track to soon secure the ability to strike the United States with a ballistic missile. His missile claim was not backed by U.S. intelligence reports and appeared to be exaggerated, sources familiar with the reports have told Reuters. Questions about the justification for the war come as the U.S. military revealed on Sunday the first American casualties of the conflict. A Reuters Ipsos poll on Sunday showed that 27% of Americans approved of the strikes, while 43% disapproved and 29% were not sure. It would appear also that 3 U.S. planes have been destroyed since allegedly by friendly fire. In the United States, along with all that's going on and Trump's prosciutto thin temper and ego, you also have a situation for Trump where the Supreme Court, 3 of the members of which he appointed and he thought was supposed to do his bidding, slapped him down on his trade tariffs. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, former all-in MAGA supporter, for whatever reasons that are her own, probably wanting to take over MAGA once Trump is gone. She's probably smelling that his time is coming. Is taking stances against him. He had 6 GOP members of the House vote against him in the House of Representatives on tariffs as they apply to Canada specifically. And now the Pentagon has undercut him. At the same time, Trump, who had promised the entire United States, but particularly his MAGA base, that it would be America first and no more of these wars, no more forever wars, as we mentioned, has bombed at least 7 different countries. He is, polling indicates he is now the most unpopular president in U.S. history. Right now, 27% of Americans approve of these strikes. The decision from the Supreme Court on tariffs as well creates a situation where Trump then turned around and says, he's going to impose a different type of tariff. But it created a situation that people are now suing the government to get their money back because the tariffs were illegal. The tariffs that the money that the U.S. collected has to go back to everyone. This administration had promised every household about a $2,000 check. That's probably not going to happen. That probably never was going to happen, but it's not going to happen now. The average household has paid over $1,000 extra for stuff over the past year because of tariffs. Certain states, like New York, for example, have sued the government and want that $1,100 and something back for every single household. I think the bill for the state of New York is going to come into about 12 or 13 billion dollars. All those billions and billions and billions that Trump has been bragging about. Companies like Federal Express are suing the government to get the share that they want back, and then that they had to pay back. And then the United States keeps on saying, "Oh, well, it's corporate welfare," except that Federal Express is on the record as saying is they want the money back so that they can return it to all the small businesses that used their services that paid them. Which, again, if that were to happen, then Trump would have to admit that it has been American people and American businesses paying those tariffs all along. You can see how this situation is not very good for them. We have a situation where Trump has essentially abandoned MAGA, all the promises he made to them, because, well, term limits means he doesn't need them anymore. Right? At least that's the theory, the hypothesis of Bell of the Ranch. Well, I don't think Trump calculated on the fact that the 9 members of the Supreme Court, and maybe the people of the Pentagon, and maybe members of the Republican Party who see midterms coming and see what all these, the results of all these special elections have done, where they're losing a lot. And the results of the gerrymander starting to look like it was a dummy mander, because the Latino populations within the United States that did vote with Trump this time around are really not going to vote with him this time around. And, well, they gerrymandered to include more of them because they thought they had them on lock. Turns out they don't. So with all of that going on, and his ICE stuff also not going the way he had hoped, you could see how he might be a little sensitive to being poked in the eye. He's basically acting like the drunk who comes home and can't walk straight and slamming into one wall, and then slamming into another wall, and then falls on the floor and tries to get up and falls again. What he is doing is not working. It is really not working. And Trump likes to win. No matter what happens, he always wins, right? That's his ego. Never apologize, never said you were wrong, and never, ever, ever, ever admit that someone got the best of you. But the evidence all around is that Trump is not doing well. Even, I think, yesterday, I think there was a special election in Arizona where the Democrat won. Flipped a seat. Flipped a seat from the Republicans to the Democrats in Arizona. Again, not particularly good news for him. See, I believe I took that piece of news out there so I can read it to you. But I might have that one on my phone. There we go. Takeaways from the Texas and North Carolina primaries. Hopefully, I will find the Arizona stuff too. But there were primaries yesterday in the United States. According to CNN, voters in 3 states headed to the polls for the first primary day of the 2026 midterm election on Tuesday, with the big story being a pair of Texas Senate primaries that both seemed to break quite well for Democrats' majority hopes. State Representative James Tallarico's win over U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett in the Democratic primary gave Democrats what appears to be their most electable nominee, while baggage-laden Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton forced a runoff with GOP Senator John Cornyn. Primaries were held Tuesday, not just in Texas, but also in North Carolina and in Arkansas. Sorry, it might have been Arkansas, not Arizona, that I'm talking about here. So Ken Paxton, who is a very, very unpopular statewide, he has a lot of, there's been a lot of legal issues, let's just say, with him. And John Cornyn have to go into a runoff, which means that the Republicans are going to have to spend a lot more money in primaries than they're going to need, than they should have, that they thought that they would have needed to. And James Tallarico, if anybody has heard, especially if you've been watching Stephen Colbert, it seems that the Trump administration really doesn't want him to get any profile because they had the chair of the FCC take action against Stephen Colbert if he was going to air his interview with James Tallarico on the show, because apparently it does not support the equal time rule. Now, even though the equal time rule is not supposed to apply to daytime talk shows and late night talk shows, it seems that this chair of the FCC is making that happen. So James Tallarico's interview with Stephen Colbert, however, was all over the internet and on the show's YouTube channel because that wasn't under FCC regulation, and it got over a million views relatively quickly. So there was a bit of a Streisand effect by them not wanting you to see it, and Stephen Colbert making it available anyway. In fact, Stephen Colbert, apparently, according to the rules, was supposed to not even be allowed to talk about not being able to have the interview with James Tallarico on his show. He did not respect that and said that he was not even allowed to show a photo of James Tallarico on his show, and then cleverly went to YouTube and looked for photos that said not James Tallarico and picked one of those photos, which of course was of James Tallarico. In an act of defiance, do not obey in advance. So James Tallarico got 52.8% of the vote in that Democratic runoff over Jasmine Crockett, who's an excellent, excellent senator. But he secured the nomination. The Senate runoff will last 12 weeks between Ken Paxton and John Cornyn, and it looks like it's going to be brutal, according to CNN. The GOP primary went about as expected, with Cornyn and Paxton headed for a runoff that will conclude on May 26th. Under normal circumstances, you'd say Cornyn is the clear underdog in the runoff. Usually these primaries break down between the incumbent vote and the anti-incumbent vote, and a majority of primary voters voted against the incumbent. But Paxton's baggage, including a past indictment and allegations of infidelity from his wife, suggest voting for him could be a hurdle for some Representative Wesley Hunt supporters, who could either vote for Cornyn or sit out the runoff after Hunt finished third. And beyond that, Tallarico's win in the Democratic primary could put a premium on Republicans putting forward the more electable candidate, which would seem to be Cornyn. Expect to see plenty of talk about whether President Donald Trump, who praised all three candidates in the primary, might join the national GOP and pick in Cornyn over Paxton in the name of holding the seat. That may be a tough pill for Trump to swallow, given Paxton is more MAGA than Cornyn, but Trump will also be concerned about keeping the GOP's congressional majorities. Tallarico would be the underdog against either Republican, and Democrats haven't won any statewide race in Texas since 1994, but putting this one in play would be a huge for their majority math. What's clear for now is that a massively expensive and increasingly ugly GOP campaign just got extended for 12 weeks, and that's suboptimal for Republicans. Speaking of incumbents not getting love from key figures in their national party, Representative Dan Crenshaw got the cold shoulder from Trump, Abbott, and Senator Ted Cruz, and now he's a lame duck. Crenshaw lost to State Representative Steve Toth, and it does appear to have even been close. Toth got 55.8% of the vote, and Crenshaw got 40.6%. Apparently, Crenshaw rubbed people in the MAGA movement the wrong way by occasionally showing some independence from Trump over the years. But it's also true that Texas's new map worked against him by moving in lots of Toth-friendly territory. In North Carolina, Representative Valerie Foushee was in a tight contest with Durham County Commissioner Nida Alam, a well-funded challenger running to Foushee's left in a very blue district, but Foushee won that. Let's see here. Arkansas is the one. No news. It mentioned Arkansas, but it didn't have it. Any information about it here. The seat flipping. So let's go there. There we go. According to The Hill, by Sarah Fortinsky, Democrat Alex Holliday is projected to win the special election to represent, edging out Republican Bo Renshaw. According, race was seen as a pickup opportunity for this after Holliday in 2024 narrowly lost his bid to unseat Republican incumbent Carlton Wing, who eked out a 50.97% victory. But Wing resigned in September to become the executive director of Arkansas PBS, giving Holliday another opportunity to vie for a seat. Democrats' successes in 2025 races had given the party hope for a better chance in this special election. Holliday's victory does not change control of the Senate's lower legislative chamber, where Republicans have held an 80-19 majority, but the Democratic pickup could matter for appropriation bills, which require a 75% supermajority vote for both chambers. The margins especially matter this year as Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders faces a GOP backlash to her controversial push to build a 3,000-bed prison in Franklin County, despite local reporting suggesting resistance. The governor lost her bid to schedule the special election for June 9th, which would have been after the fiscal session in April. So yeah, there you go. Losing seats. Things are not going well for Donald Trump. And therefore, he might be a little more willing to take a shot at his favorite punching bag, which is Canada. Perhaps that would explain why the Prime Minister his tongue a little bit. And I said, seeing the retaliation against Spain probably proves once again that the Prime Minister was correct. But this press conference with the Prime Minister had questions. And interestingly enough, with everything going on in the Middle East, as I had predicted when we talked a couple of days ago, between the Prime Minister's response to what was going on to the Middle East, his statement, and the situation with regard to transnational repression from India, and the fact that a lot of people are not happy that we might be doing closer trade with India without, at least publicly, having gotten a resolution or consequences for activities that are suspected. I said that probably the moves with India would be the ones that could cause the most problem for the Prime Minister in the future, and not his statement on Iran. Well, the press there, who has been complaining for a while now about not being able to ask him questions, had the opportunity, and the first question asked was not about Iran, but rather India.
As outlined in our joint statement, Canada and India are forging a new...
Oops, sorry. That is my mistake here at Kits and Cubs. Pardon me. I forgot to put the time up to the question. So let's do that right now. And here we go.
To your questions. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin the question. Première question, Mark.
Mackenzie Gray, Global News. Prime Minister, are you confident that the Indian government is no longer involved in extortions, threats, and violence in Canada?
Well, the first thing to say is that our approach to foreign interference, to transnational repression, to extortion, the crime of extortion, in all cases is one of vigilance and engagement. Vigilance in terms of tightening the legal framework in Canada. I won't go into all the details. I think you're familiar with the 6 laws that are still before Parliament and the Senate, which will make a major difference to the powers of sentencing, the bail regime, and tightening our asylum system, tightening our borders, all of which will help address these issues. First point. The second element of vigilance, of course, is adequate resources for law enforcement, 1,000 more RCMP, 1,000 more border service agents, coordination at multiple levels of government, reinforcing resources for our security, our various security agencies as well. The third element of vigilance is deploying actively our intelligence services and the highest levels of government being informed on a regular basis in terms of developments. We're in the process structurally of appointing the Foreign Interference Commissioner. We proposed an individual who was the former electoral officer of British Columbia. We're consulting with the opposition parties to move forward on that. So all of those are structural. Then it comes to a question of engagement. And engagement, to engage, you have to be able to talk to countries where there have been issues, and to raise issues, including at the highest levels, to ensure that the cooperation is there, whether it's extortion or some other form of cross-border criminal activity or security risks. That is what we have done. From the moment that we reestablished a dialogue at the leader level with India, almost immediately we had meetings with our national security advisors. They've been followed up on multiple occasions. We've reestablished national security cooperation. We've reestablished defense. We're reestablishing defense cooperation and sharing of information. In the meetings of ministers, including the foreign minister, these issues have been raised. There have been frank discussions, and including in my meetings with Prime Minister Modi, including in Delhi 2 days ago. Thank you.
So here, if we're looking at this answer, it would appear that the way that we are trying to deal with this is to try to create structural systems within this agreement for such issues to be able to be discussed, probably more behind the scenes, which creates an opportunity for India to save face. A lot of this is a similar. It strikes me similar as to what we have been doing with China by reestablishing the bodies that we had that that allows us to talk about things that perhaps rather than China just announcing, okay, 100% tariff on canola seed, that issue can be brought to that table first so it can be discussed and resolved before the reaction is to just slap on a tariff and then it takes 3 or 4 years to try to undo it. In this situation, because the government of India, as evidenced by the rhetoric of the current High Commissioner of India to Canada, who still acknowledges there is nothing wrong, that the government of India is in no way participative in such activities, that it is absurd to even suggest so, and that the government of India has been provided with absolutely no proof that it had happened. All of things that I am very disinclined to believe. This might be a situation where the government of India is very much trying to say, okay, fine, but let's not talk about this in public. Which it seems that the government of Canada might be willing to do so long as there is indeed actual action. Of course, as we're going to learn here later on, in one of the Prime Minister's answers, there are some legal um, um, uh, some of these charges and stuff have been brought, are in the realm of the courts, or in that realm, and therefore those are probably going to continue. So if there is, it seems that from what I'm gathering here, that the government of India would probably only consider proof a guilty verdict of some kind as proof that it had actually happened. So there are things going through the courts, and the prime minister obviously can't comment on that, or shouldn't be commenting on that. So that's not going to happen. And should there be a guilty verdict that comes in court, then maybe we will get some type of acknowledgement from the High Commissioner that there was something untoward. But I doubt very much that's going to happen before then. Um, he was then asked the same question in French. Uh, Again, mentions in French that he did discuss these matters with Modi over the course of his 2 days in India. He was then asked a question about, in French, about repatriating Canadians who are in the Middle East. I believe the last number I heard is that I've heard numbers of like around 90,000 and even over 100,000 at the moment. It appears that there is no specific plan to send anything, but there is, I think, a plan to help people. I believe if they, or to provide some type of assistance. I think if they can get to certain countries, I'm not completely clear on that. But with regard to repatriation, that we know, there's not at least at the time, any specific flights planned by the government of Canada, but people are managing to get out, according to CBC's Mike Crowley here. It says, I'm just going to take a look here. Global Affairs Canada says that more than 97,000 Canadian citizens and permanent residents are registered in the Middle East. The largest populations are in the United Arab Emirates, around 25,000, and Lebanon, around 23,000. The federal agency says there's little it can do currently to help Canadians leave the region. Quote, prepare contingency plans that don't rely on the government of Canada's assistance for departure, Global Affairs currently says on its travel advisories for countries around the Middle East. However, Ottawa says it has secured a limited number of seats to be allocated on a first-come, first-served basis on a Wednesday commercial flight from Beirut to Istanbul. The Canadian Embassy in Israel mentions bus travel to Egypt as an option for Canadian citizens to leave, but said it cannot make any recommendation either for or against that method of transportation. Quote, given the situation in the regions, sheltering in the place may be your safest option. If you wish to leave, make sure you can do so safely. Foreign Affairs Anita Anand said safety for Canadians in the region is the government's, quote, top priority. During an event in Toronto on Tuesday, Anand said she asked the government of Oman for use of the country's airspace, if necessary, to help Canadian citizens get out of the Middle East. So that's about where things stand at the moment, if you are a Canadian citizen. And I believe the Prime Minister had reiterated that in French's response. Nobody had asked him to state that in English. Then he is asked about a question with regard to India based on an article that appeared in the Globe and Mail. And this is an article by Mike Hager and Greg Mercer. And it says here, the article is Evidence Links Indian Officials at Vancouver Consulate to Killing of Sikh Activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And I will read the article in so that way you can understand the question and the response. Canadian national security officials were presented with evidence that Indian consular staff operating in Vancouver supplied information to assist in the assassination of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, two sources told the Globe and Mail. One of the Indian officials worked as a visa officer in the consulate, using his position to gather information about Mr. Nijjar from members of the Indian diaspora in Surrey, BC, said the sources, one of whom is in law enforcement and one in national security. Authorities believe the man, Kanwaljit Singh, let me pronounce, I think that was wrong, Kanwaljit Singh, was also an intelligence officer with India's External Intelligence Agency, the Research and Analysis Wing, or RAW, the law enforcement source said. The national security source didn't identify Mr. Singh by name, but confirmed that CSIS was monitoring an undercover RAW agent posted to the consulate who was also working as a visa officer. Mr. Singh worked with Manish, a career diplomat who goes by one name and was Vancouver's consul general at the time, both sources said. The Globe is not identifying the sources because they were not authorized to share details of the investigation. Their information is based on the RCMP's investigation and intelligence from Canada's spy service and its allies in the United States and Britain. While Ottawa has accused agents of India of being involved in the assassination, the identities of consular officials and their alleged roles in the Niger plot have never been publicly disclosed. The federal government expelled 6 diplomats in October 2024, but only publicly then named High Commissioner Sanjay Verma. Mr. Singh had previously been on a Canadian government list of accredited diplomats, the Canadian press reported at the time, and his name was removed after the expulsions. Mr. Nijar, who was a key figure in organizing a referendum urging the creation of a separate Sikh homeland out of what is now the Indian state of Punjab, was gunned down in the parking lot of a Gurdwara in Surrey, BC on June 18, 2023. The investigation into his death frayed an already strained relationship between Canada and the Indian government of Narendra Modi. Prime Minister Mark Carney is currently in India trying to restore relations as part of his effort to secure a free trade deal by the end of the year. India has consistently denied any role in a conspiracy to kill Mr. Nijar, a Sikh separatist who it long blamed, often without evidence, for coordinating violent attacks in his homeland. India's High Commissioner to Canada, Dinesh Patnaik, told reporters on Saturday in Mumbai that there was never any foreign interference in Canada by Indian officials, insisting, quote, "It never happened." Sure, Jan. Sure. The High Commissioner's office declined further comment when asked by the Globe about the allegations against Vancouver consular staff. Mr. Manish did not respond to messages for comments on social media and emailed Saturday to the High Commission in Cyprus, where he is now ambassador. Gee, I wonder why. The Globe could not reach Mr. Singh, whose location after he was expelled from Canada isn't known. Information about Mr. Nijar was passed to another RAW officer in New Delhi, and that officer communicated with the Lawrence Bishnoi organized crime group, a prominent Indian gang blamed for a rash of extortions and other offenses in Canada, both sources said. A Canada-based member of the gang then helped arrange the killing of the outspoken Sikh activist, the sources said. If this sounds very, very familiar to what you heard, and what I read you the other day about the guilty plea in New York State, involving Nikhil Gupta, who thought he was hiring an assassin for hire that turned out to be undercover agents. And it was stated that a lot of this was done with the help of Vikash Yadav, an Indian government employee that would you would be right if you remember here. It said Yadav was employed by the government of India's cabinet secretariat, which houses India's foreign intelligence service, the research analysis ring, the RAW, that we're talking about in this story. Yadav recruited Gupta to orchestrate the assassination of the victim. And in furtherance of the assassination, Yadav provided Gupta with personal information about the victim, including the victim's home address. A lot of these things sound similar. And of course, stated in that now that Nijar was murdered, there was now no need to wait for killing the victim here in New York, because it had been asked to do this as soon as possible, but most assuredly not around the time of the Indian Prime Minister's official state visit to the United States, which was scheduled to begin on or about June 20th, 2023. Hardeep Singh Nijar, I believe, was murdered on June 18th, 2023. These cases are linked. But Mr. Patnaik is still claiming it never happened, quote. All right. Now, here's another point. So I'm going to go back and read that previous paragraph from the article. Information about Mr. Nijar was passed on to another RAW officer in New Delhi. The New Delhi officer, the Globe's two sources said, was Vikash Yadav, the same officer named in a U.S. indictment as the mastermind behind a foiled plot to murder another Sikh activist and associate of Mr. Nijar's. A crime to which someone has pled guilty. On Monday, Mr. Carney is scheduled to meet with the Indian Prime Minister in an effort to reset the Indian-Canadian relationship, diversify Canada's international trade, and lessen the country's economic reliance on the United States. Last week, in a briefing with journalists in advance of Mr. Carney's trip, a senior government official said Ottawa does not believe India is continuing to interfere in Canada's domestic politics. Public Safety Minister Gary Anand-Ansagri later walked that back, saying there's, quote, a lot more work to do to ensure agents of the Indian government are not coercing or intimidating people in Canada. Anita Anand said that she did not agree with that statement, and you will hear later that the Prime Minister also claims he does not agree with that statement. Prior to Mr. Nijar's death in June 2023, New Delhi had long accused him of being a terrorist and unsuccessfully asked the RCMP for years to arrest him and send him to India. That's one of Mr. Patnaik's frequent deflections. He keeps on saying, we keep on appealing to the government of Canada to help us stop these terrorists that are doing terrible things to our country, and the government of Canada never takes our calls or listens to us. And it's because though the government of India may consider people here in Canada advocating for an independent state as being terrorism and a crime, in Canada, we do not consider that to be a crime. That's how we had two referendums on Quebec separation, how we have a Parti Québécois and we have a Bloc Québécois. In Canada, advocating for an independent state is considered a legitimate political opinion, so long as you do so in accordance with the law. In late July 2023, Canadian officials were alerted to the alleged role of the Indian government in the slaying, according to the national security source. Canada received information that Indian officials in New Delhi had plotted to kill Mr. Nijar and other Sikh separatists, the source said. Canadian officials also received information gleaned through wiretaps that captured a conversation referring to how Mr. Nijar had been successfully eliminated, the source said. In September 2023, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told Parliament minutes after the Globe broke the story that Canadian intelligence agencies were pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between Indian government agents and the assassination of Mr. Nijar. That same day, then Minister of Foreign Affairs Mélanie Joly announced that she had expelled Pavan Kumar Rai, a man Joly said was the chief of India's foreign intelligence agency in Canada. And you will also remember that our leader of the opposition at that time decided to take the word of the government of India over the word of our security services. The RCMP gathered evidence that Mr. Singh, sometimes working with proxies in the South Asian community, used coercion and bribery to extract information on Mr. Nijar, leveraging his authority to issue Indian travel visas to those wanting to visit family in India, the law enforcement source said. And again, I will stop to note that our leader of the opposition, even though he did take the side of the government officials in India rather than the side of our security services, has been making a lot of hay on the issue of wanting laws to counter or to address this type of coercion. Even though he took the word of the government of India over the word of security officials in Canada, which is kind of interesting for him to do, given that he doesn't hold an NSICOP level security clearance and wouldn't know. Security clearance that he still says he does not need. But I digress. Some who declined to cooperate were threatened with consequences for their relatives in India, the source said. Investigators observed Mr. Singh visiting the downtown Vancouver consulate late in the evening, the law enforcement source said. There was also evidence gathered that Mr. Singh relayed information about Mr. Nijar back to New Delhi, the national security source said. Canadian authorities believe Mr. Yadav, the RAW officer, relayed this intelligence and money to the Bishnoi group, the two sources told the Globe. Mr. Yadav has been on the FBI's most wanted list since October 2024 and is accused by the U.S. of orchestrating a plot to kill Gurpatwant Singh Panun, a New York-based activist who worked closely with Mr. Nijar on a campaign to create an independent Sikh state in Punjab known as Khalistan. Mr. Singh Panun would be the person referred to in the document I read from the New York, let's make sure I get the name right, the United States Attorney Office in the Southern District of New York as being the victim. Fortunately, the assassination plot in his case was foiled. American prosecutors have alleged in court documents that Mr. Yadav shared private video of Mr. Dijar's dead body with the man he had asked to kill Mr. Panun. Mr. Yadav engaged members of the Bishnoi gang to hire the 4 alleged gunmen accused of opening fire on Mr. Nijar as he attempted to drive his pickup truck off the lot of Suri's guru, Nanak Gurdwara, the 2 sources said. Canada declared the Bishnoi gang a terrorist organization in September 2025, blaming it for a rash of extortions and violence in the South Asian community. Police agencies and local politicians had previously called for the federal government to act. The law enforcement source said Mr. Singh and Mr. Manish were not arrested because prosecuting them would have been impossible because of their diplomatic immunity. Mr. Manish was officially reassigned to be India's High Commissioner to Cyprus in July 2023, 3 weeks after Mr. Nijar was killed, but he exited Canada in May 2024. India's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said at the time of his departure. Members of the Sikh community alleged that consular officials were involved in the plot, but the Vancouver consulate denied these allegations in a 2024 statement. Quote, Canada-based Khalistani extremists and terrorists who do not represent the peace-loving Sikh community are enemies of better Canada-India bilateral relations and keep making accusations without any evidence, without facing any social or legal costs, the statement said. We now have a guilty plea in the United States. That statement may need to be updated. Mr. Singh was expelled in 2024 as the RCMP deepened its investigation into Mr. Nijar's death, according to the law enforcement source. Dan Stanton, a former CSIS intelligence officer, said if Canada has reliable intelligence good enough to be used as evidence against Indian officials, then it needs to be included in the criminal case. Quote, this is precisely where intelligence should be used. In this case, secrecy serves only to protect a foreign state, he said. Quote, I think the case should extend to the Indian government. If the government chooses to prosecute only those who pulled the trigger and stop there, that would effectively allow a foreign state to kill our citizens and get a free pass. Simon Lafortune, a spokesperson for the public safety minister, said the department was working, quote, to ensure all federal tools are being used to disrupt transnational repression from foreign actors and extortion linked to criminal networks. He declined to comment on the specifics of the Nijar investigation. After Mr. Yadav was implicated by the U.S., the Indian government asserted that he was, quote, a rogue agent who was operating independently. India says Mr. Yadav can't face trial in the U.S. because he has been charged in a kidnapping and extortion case in New Delhi. Gee, wonderful guy. So Mr. Yadav is suspected to be involved in both cases. The government of India asserted that he is a rogue agent. Nadav has been charged in a kidnapping and extortion case in New Delhi, but the thing in Canada, it never happened. Four Indian citizens have been charged in Mr. Nijar's slaying. Kanranpreet Singh, Karan Brar, and Kalmatpreet Singh and Amandeep Singh, all in their 20s, are facing charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They arrived in Canada on temporary visas. The Canadian Federal Justice Department is fighting to prevent, quote, sensitive national security information from emerging at their coming murder trial. In an application to the federal court, lawyers representing the Attorney General of Canada asked for permission to withhold some evidence, arguing that releasing it, quote, would be injurious to international relations and national security. Well, then don't release it, but I'm sure that there's a way to let the judge specifically see that without it having to be read into the record somehow. Or that the court could be sealed. Or something. It's not absolutely necessary that that evidence not be released. I'm sure that there are ways to release it and protect its safety. Quote, no diplomats or consular staff have been charged as a result of the investigation. So that is the state of things in that article. New information that came out while the Prime Minister was away. So this next question deals with everything here that I just read into the record. And here's what the Prime Minister had to say.
Steve Chase.
Steve Chase with the Globe.
Oops, let me just make sure that I've got the screen up. Yes, I do. Okay. So this is Steve Chase of Global News.
Mail. I want to ask you about
Global Mail,
Hardy
sorry.
saying Niger. Are you concerned about the report in the Globe and Mail this week that showed the Canadian authorities gathered evidence showing that Indian officials in their Vancouver consulate were assisting by providing information that helped with the assassination of Mr. Niger? And I want to ask you about your predecessor said there was credible allegations of a link between the Indian government and Canada. Do you agree with that assessment? And finally, what are you doing?
Sorry, could you, the full quotation that you're using, I think you cut it off.
Your predecessor
Yes.
said
Yeah.
in the House of Commons that there were credible allegations of a link between the government of Canada, government of India, and the death of Mr. Niger. Do you agree with that assessment? And finally, what is the government doing to hold India accountable for the death of Mr. Niger?
So all of those questions fall under, all of those questions fall under the same rubric, which is there is a process underway this is a criminal procedure. There's a process underway. And my job at this point, with respect to that process, is to make sure that I do not say anything that prejudices the prospect of justice being served. So in that context, I can't comment on the specific three aspects of your question. And I hope you'll appreciate that what is important here is that justice is served, and that the immense resources that are put in place in order to ensure that justice is served run their course.
Thanks.
Next
Thank you.
question.
Want to point out here, kids and cubs, that the criminal cases are against the 4 people who are alleged to have pulled the trigger. As the article ended, no diplomats or consular staff have been charged as a result of the investigation. So perhaps he could comment on the aspect of what it is, the third part of that question, which was what it is that he is doing to hold the government of India accountable. Of course, if there was involvement by the government of India in this particular case, perhaps commenting on that indirectly does affect the case. I'm not that well versed in the law to indicate whether or not that is the third part of the question is a question that he could safely answer, given that there is nobody been charged there. But if there is evidence of their involvement or their assistance that comes into this case, then maybe it could be. So I'm not, I can't formulate an opinion on the fact that he did not answer at least the third part of that question. He is then pressed on India a couple of other times here, and you can watch that the press conference if you want to get more of that information. But there's not that much new to what has been said in those answers per se. They finally get around to asking about Iran a little later on. And the question asked has a lot to do with the fact, well, has a lot to do specifically, has to do with the fact that some people uh, are reading into the words and are claiming that there's inconsistency with what was said in Davos. So let's take a look at that.
And that's what we're doing.
Next
Thank you.
question.
Alex Ballingall with the Toronto Star. In your Davos speech, you said that one of Canada's principles and the principal aspects of our foreign policy is the prohibition of the use of force that's not consistent with the UN Charter. Now you're saying, albeit regretfully, we've supported this action despite the lack of engagement with the United Nations. So it seems like there's a potential, or it seems like there is a contradiction in those two things. So can you explain how we arrive at that position?
Well, there's a few things, Alex. What I also said in the Davos speech and said today, and this is core, is we take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. We're not going to passively wait for the world as we wish it would be. We would like international law to always and everywhere be respected. Canada's intention, Canada's policy itself is to always and everywhere respect international law. So that's the first point. Secondly, I will observe, and I would take up, and it's not fair to your colleagues, but I would take up all the remaining time in this press conference times 10 if I went through the serial violations of international law by the Islamic Republic of Iran over decades, and all the efforts under the international system to contain those using international frameworks and international laws. It is a failure of the international system that this country repeatedly violated international law, terrorized an entire region, and through extension, the world, including the murder of Canadians. Let's not forget that. Repression of women. The murder of 15,000 of their citizens within the past few weeks for protest. Now, brings us to the question, though, which I think is in your question of the current situation and its perspective relative to international law. And look, the first thing I'll say with respect to that, it's for the United States and Israel to make the case, and for whether or not that is the case. And it's for others, more expert than me, non-lawyer, certainly non-international lawyer, who are more expert to make that determination. And that said, well, Canada was not asked to participate. You know that. We were not informed in advance. We were not asked to participate. Prima facie, it appears that these actions are inconsistent with international law. So we would not have been in a position earlier this week, or the weekend, I guess, to take a judgment that met our standards if we had been asked to participate. We weren't. We haven't made that formal judgment. It's for others to make those judgments. As I said, Alex, we were dealing with the world as it is. So in the context of what's happened, what's been begun, we support the efforts to end the Iranian nuclear program and its decades-long process, regime's decade-long process of state-sponsored terrorism. But we remind that international law binds. It binds particularly with respect to civilian infrastructure, and it binds all parties, should bind all parties. We call for a de-escalation. We're prepared to assist in that. Thank you.
I'll pass it, Mr. Carney.
Okay. So in this answer, you can see clearly the tightrope that he is walking. There is no inconsistency because we're seeing the world as it is. Mentions that Iran has been a long-time violator of international law. One could point out at this time that one could make a case that the United States is also, and Israel have also been long-time violators of international law. One could. But here, obviously, keeping the focus on Iran and reminding us, of course, that Iran has taken action against Canadian citizens in particular as well. And yes, it's true, we should not forget that. And that might explain Canada's stance. Being very clear that it is up to the United States and Israel to make the case, and because we are not a participant, we weren't consulted and whatnot, we're not even going to attempt to try and speculate about what the case for this might be. Pretty wise, very diplomatic, good sidestep here. And then reiterating again, supports action taken to address the nuclear issue and to reduce Iran's ability to be a factor of chaos in the broader world and in the region. But it would appear, not saying that it is, it's definitively another diplomatic maybe sidestep that doesn't look like he's poking in the eye, saying, as opposed to Spain says, you are in violation of international law, says it would appear that this is in violation of international law. If it isn't, then the United States and Israel need to explain how it is not, but it would appear to. So, and we support things that are done within the context of international law. So we support taking action to curb Iran's ability to secure a nuclear weapon and to be an agent of chaos throughout the world and a broader region, but we do not support actions that are outside of international law, which is pretty much an open and shut case that these actions are. Again, it's a really very, very diplomatic answer, very carefully worded. Again, Ken allows for people to say, well, he stated it was in violation of international law, but other people to say, well, yeah, he did state it, but he still says he's supporting it. He is still not saying he supports the strikes. He's still not saying he's supporting action outside of international law. And that's probably about as clear as you can get, which for a lot of people is as clear as mud. So how do you point out there may be a violation of international law without explicitly saying, we do not support the strikes, because these are the words, these things are a lot about not what people say, but what people are really trying hard not to say, as we point out on the show. He's really trying hard not to go to a mic and say, this is a violation of international law and we do not support the bombings. He's also trying very hard not to say, we support the international bombings, because clearly he doesn't, because they're a violation of international law. What Spain has done perhaps has given the Prime Minister a bit more cover to be able to go this far, because since Spain is outright saying it and has kicked, has not allowed the bases to be used, and therefore some of the planes have left. What we are saying, while all true and very, very precisely and maybe even pedantically accurate, is not as bold. And Spain, by being bold, maybe has captured Donald Trump's attention. And therefore, we're able to take this extra step to add a little extra clarification, still without really being as definitive and bold as Spain is, perhaps. And this perhaps, because Spain has been so bold, except the cover that provides allows the Prime Minister to do this in a manner that is consistent with his obligation to protect the national and defend the national interest. In that, he is not going to poke the bear directly, as Spain has. He just isn't. And same thing in India, he's not going to poke that bear in the stick very publicly either. And that's why he is really putting the emphasis on structural changes that we are making to the way we do business, we interact, and of course, relying on the fact that maybe this increased trade with India, because yes, it has benefits for us, but it has benefits for them too. Maybe they don't want to lose that doubling of investment to $70 billion by 2030, whatever the year was there. And therefore, India might find it in its interest to cooperate more on intelligence and pumping its brakes on doing the type of activities it is alleged that they have done both in the United States and here, that may or may not have involved Mr. Yadav, who India now claims has gone rogue. Yeah, he worked for us, but he went rogue. This wasn't at our direction. Not poke. Did I say not poke the bear in the stick? Not poke the bear in the eye with a stick. It sounded better in my head. What was in my head didn't come out if I said poke the bear in the stick. That's a pretty sensitive area to get poked in, I'll just say. So as you can see, the Prime Minister doing a lot of work here in order not to, how would I put it, in order not to go as bold as the leader of Spain has. He is asked to repeat this in French, of course, because that's a big moment of the press conference. And then proceed here to the next part that has something that I thought was of note.
Let's see.
JP, we'll have time for 2 more questions after this one.
JP Tasker, CBC News. Good morning, Prime Minister. How are you?
We'll take 3 just so there's not a rebellion behind
That's
you, JP.
probably a good idea.
Yeah.
What was President Trump's reaction to
I'll
you
try to be
supporting the airstrikes on Iran?
I haven't spoken to the president.
What does that say about your relationship?
The president's. I don't think it says anything, to be honest.
We received nothing from the Americans.
Look, we take a position. Let me just make a clear point. We took a position, not asking for something. We took a position because we view the nuclear threat and the export of terrorism of Iran over decades as one of the gravest threats to international peace and security. And the Americans and the Israelis haven't taken this action in that limited sense. We supported that aspect. That is not a blank check. That is not us participating. That is not us asking for something in exchange for that. None of that's true. That is just a straight up position. Thank you.
Next.
Okay, now this is the closest that the Prime Minister has come to say outright that he does not support that action. Right? We support these 2 very limited things. Iran not acquiring a nuclear weapon and not being an exporter of terrorism. Israel and the United States have taken action that is somewhat outside of the scope that we would like in order to be able to get those goals achieved. That's about as clear an answer as you are going to get there. We weren't asked. We're not asking for anything. This is our position as principle. We're not saying this in exchange for anything. This is just where we stand. And yes, Kit Saucy, that was a fatherly enough of this shit. Agreed. Now, in this next response, the Prime Minister also gives a very well-crafted diplomatic answer.
Question.
Prime Minister Brian Platt from Bloomberg. What we know so far is that Iran's supreme leader has been killed. Many other senior officials have been killed. Do you have a position on what replaces that in Iran? What kind of regime comes next? Do you want to see a wholesale regime change here, or is stability more important?
Well, look, we have long wanted for decades and continue to this hour that the will of the Iranian people is respected and that a government consistent with the will of the Iranian people comes in place. How that would come about, that's I don't have, I mean, it's an exceptionally complex situation. I'm not inserting a war aim into conflict that others started.
Catherine.
Hello, Prime Minister. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
I wonder if you can just help us better understand Canada's position about what is happening at this moment. There's been a call for a ceasefire. We heard from your ministers. Is Canada explicitly asking the United States and Israel to stop as well, making those cases to their officials? And also, the United States has made a call for the people of Iran to rise up. What is Canada's position on that?
Well, I'll just refer to my answer to the previous question on the second. And with respect to the first, any cessation of hostilities, whether you call it a ceasefire or cessation of hostilities, full de-escalation, it takes all sides. In order to do that, as I said in my comments, in our judgment, that will take a broader diplomatic effort. That broader diplomatic effort will very much have to involve the countries in the Middle East that have been attacked now by Iran. Their civilian infrastructure, their civilians have been attacked. And certainly that has been, they've been successful largely in defending themselves. Some of the missiles have gotten through, but the intent has been widespread civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure. So those countries, many of whom are close allies of Canada, need to be involved in any diplomatic solution. Thank you.
Ian?
So again, in these two answers, you will see, the Prime Minister here keeping the focus where it needs to be, where Canadian interests are involved here, talking about our other allies and regions in the partners in the region, and how it is that they should be involved in any solution, because now that the conflict has spilled over, they are now involved. Position on what comes next, more power for the people, but not saying, like this, the position on regime change. Specifically as an objective of this war, sidestepping that, keeping the focus on actually the people, and on our long-standing position that, yes, we would definitely prefer, our position is for the people of Iran to be able to make decisions that are in their own self-interest and have the means to express them, which was a very similar answer to what he gave when the United States took over Venezuela and took out captured Maduro and brought him to the United States and asked, what does he see next? And again, made a call for the people of Venezuela to be able to express themselves democratically and have the leadership of their choice, which of course was denied to them by the United States, just taking out Maduro, but keeping the current regime in power, and President Trump declaring himself president of Venezuela at the moment, and nobody in Venezuela voted for him. One last question here, again, important, and I am going to show you the answer to one of the India questions that I skipped specifically because it was formulated as a point blank one, and point blank yes or no answer, and it would be very important to see it. I did put an asterisk among it because it was between a whole group of Indian questions, but I've been just wanting to make sure that there was no content in there that was very important. And so when I was checking out the answer for that, I decided that it probably is something that you should see here. So I will present it to you after this question here.
Ian Austin from the New York Times. Has Canada seen any evidence of the imminent danger the president cited for launching the attack on the weekend? And should anyone take any confidence in his view that this will be over in a matter of weeks?
Well, Ian, I'm on intelligence. I can't share intelligence that we've received. It's not appropriate, particularly within broader intelligence circles that we may have received from others. So I can't comment on that aspect.
I've got one last question.
And the timing, the president's president's forecast that this will all be done in a matter of weeks.
I won't speculate on it. What I would say is that in our view, that the efforts should begin now to de-escalate the situation, and Ian, as I referenced in my previous answer, that needs to involve broader parties than just the United States, Israel, and Iran.
We'll do a last question to
All right, kids and cubs. So as you can see here, the Prime Minister again not willing to speculate on this, whether or not President Trump is correct that it would take just a couple of weeks, because that's an answer that has the potential to not age well. So no need to stick out your neck on that. It's not a critical issue whatsoever. I'm going to go back to the two questions about India that I sort of had lumped in, because there is some very important content there for you to hear, because he is being pressed in this, because the answer is not clear to the media as to whether or not Canada agrees with the statement of that official that claimed that the situation of India being involved in transnational repression on our soil is completely over. And well, media likes a clear yes or no here. So he is this is him being asked. So he was asked about the Globe and Mail report question, and he gave that answer. And this is him being pressed to offer even more clarity.
Abigail Beeman, CTV News. I still have not heard a clear answer as to whether you believe India is still actively involved in foreign interference, and if you would not use those words of the government official, will there be consequences for that official?
There will not be consequences for those officials. Look, there are, in terms of vigilance and monitoring, which we do actively and on which I receive regular briefings. There are aspects of those briefings that I can't share in public, and I'm not going to betray them. I will tell you that there is progress on these issues, and that progress is a product, in my judgment, it's a product of the resources we're putting in. It's a product of the clarity of our position. We will not tolerate foreign interference, transnational repression by anyone, and I stress by anyone. There's a wide range of countries who make these efforts from time to time. And we will call it out, and we will engage with it in a way that is as effective as possible to protect Canadians, and that's what we're doing.
Okay. And the question that was asked just before that has a little more substance into what it is Canada is doing with regard to try to establish those safeguards a little more systemically.
Morning, Prime Minister. Stephanie Taylor, National Post. You have outlined what steps Canada is doing to protect citizens from foreign interference and in transnational repression, but a lot of confusion exists, including within your own cabinet, about what Canada thinks India is doing. So I'm hoping that you can clarify in a yes or no way. Do you agree with your own government official, yes or no, who suggested India is no longer actively interfering in Canada's democratic process and that Indian agents are no longer involved in murders and extortions within Canada? Yes or no?
Well, I'm not sure that's an exact quote.
That is what he suggested.
That's not a quote.
I can read the quote.
I think, we can debate whether you had a discussion that was not for quotation, but if you want to read a quote from something that's not for quotation. These are the words I would use, and it's important. I would not use those words, okay, first point. Secondly, our approach, as I said in response to the first question, is one of, apologies, the second question, is one of vigilance and engagement. And we have made progress, but regardless of the progress that has been made, it is our responsibility to have both aspects. First and foremost, to be vigilant. Okay, vigilant in terms of tightening the laws, vigilant ensuring that we have the right resources at the security level, at the police level, in terms of the coordination, vigilant in ensuring that those resources are active, vigilant in ensuring that we are using all sources of intelligence to direct resources to protect Canadians. And then alongside that, to be engaged with countries so that if and when there are issues or even a sense of issues, that we are raising them. Engagement at the level of national security, engagement at the level of defense, engagement at the level of police, engagement at the political level. All of those. And if you look at the record, if I may just finish on this, of this government in less than a year, 6 major crime bills, many of which address specifically these issues, thousands of new resources being put in the RCMP and border security, huge technical resources also being put in place. That's an odd way to put it, but physical resources in terms of surveillance, and re-engagement, including at the national security level and the political level, so that we can address these issues actually, in other words, today and prospectively, so that prevention is there as well as redress. Thank you.
Next question.
So there you have it. The Prime Minister being a little more clear here, talking about dual strategy here of vigilance and engagement as a way to ensure that we are taking the actions that are needed to both not only protect Canadian citizens citizens on the soil, but establish relationships between security services so that information can flow better, perhaps to avoid the number of instances that the government of India, if it is indeed doing this, would have to have recourse to transnational repression in order to have whatever, or to feel it's at least being heard with regard to its objectives, if not having them met. And working to create the structural systems that are required so that we can more proactively and preemptively address any type of issue, should there be one. So, again, very, very, very pointed answers here. And of course, in the answer that came before, well, would there be consequences to the official? And of course, he's like, well, no. The official is there to give the best advice that they can. The advice here, like I said, the advice that was given here that that there is not a problem leads to questions about whether or not the Prime Minister is getting good advice. But being wrong about something is not necessarily enough of a reason to impose consequences. So we want our officials to be able to speak freely and to give what they believe is the best advice. If there starts to be consequences for that, you kind of put a chill. You kind of send the message, "Will tell us what we want to hear, or else there will be consequences." But our officials give advice, and then it is up to Cabinet and the Prime Minister to determine how much of that advice they're going to take and what they're going to leave, because the intelligence speaks from that one perspective, and the government has to deal with a whole lot more. Right? It's one of those reasons that using the CSIS regulations when it came time to deal with the convoy turned out to be limited, because CSIS has a very specific mandate. And this was a case of domestic activity that didn't necessarily completely dovetail nicely or perfectly into what CSIS's mandate was. And that was one of the reasons that led to the judges in those cases determining that the order to oh God, what, I can't remember the name of the act. All of a sudden, starts with an E. The act that was involved in order to justify the actions taken by the Canadian government to dismantle the convoy process was didn't fit in with that decision, and therefore was probably not an okay decision. But with judges also saying that given the context of the convoy and how unique it was, was definitely something that deserved there to be a structure that existed legally for it to be addressed and for the measures that were taken to be legal to address it. And a judge even saying that, you know, having to like go back and retroactively, you know, take some factors in that were take factors that were known now, but that were not known at the time that the decision was made in order to arrive to at this conclusion, which seemed a little odd. Um, but claiming, you know, that this was his judicial opinion and it could very likely be overturned, and that in similar situations, he might have probably decided to do the same thing that the government did do. Um, because back then, when we replaced the War Measures Act with the Emergencies Act, there we go, we decided not to do the hard work of changing the threshold by which something would be declared an emergency. We just decided to use the CSIS one because we had updated the CSIS one. And now we've come into a situation where it was an imperfect situation to handle that specific, for the application of that law. And I still haven't heard anybody in Canada talking about rewriting or presenting an amendment to the Emergencies Act that would address that type of unrest on home soil by domestic actors, which really should be done. But he did point out to 6 bills addressing things like extortion and transnational repression and all that type of stuff, the use of internet to be able to commit such crimes and such and matters of the like, that Pierre Poilievre keeps on calling for action, but the Conservatives appear to be stalling in committee, which again, should give you an idea of how serious the leader of the opposition is about actually addressing the solution. It seems more that he needs the problem to persist so that he can keep on complaining about it rather than a solution to exist so that the problem can be addressed. Because if the problem's addressed, well, then you can't fundraise off it anymore now, can you? All right, kits and cubs, that is the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Another long one for us today. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you explain why it is that our content resonates with you, because that is advertising that we just cannot buy. So thank you so much for all that you do to help us. And if you would like to help us in other ways, kits and cubs, one of the ways you can do that is by going to our YouTube page and clicking on subscribe if you haven't already. Also click on like and share. Smash with all our buttons. Get freaky. We approve. And so do Kit Cassie and Kit Elaine. They love it when you smash with our buttons. So please go there. It helps us with the algorithm and helps people find us as well. So it's all good things. Now, kits and cubs, if you would like to help us in another way, one of the ways you can do so is by going to our coffee page, affectionately known as the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund. If you scan that QR code, that will bring you right there. And yesterday I went around and I looked because I know that some of you do buy YouTube memberships. And as we learned yesterday, when you do that, or any contributions through YouTube, YouTube takes 30% of that. So if you would like us to receive more of your contribution, have less of it go to the people who run YouTube and their shareholders, we have been able to, on our coffee page, set up a system that is not only for one-time tips, but that can be a monthly recurring donation that you allow how many months you want. If you want to do just 3 and whatnot, you don't have to do for a full year, but you can set the time and cancel at any time whatsoever. So if you would prefer to do it through that method rather than through YouTube, so that we get about 95 to 97% of your donation rather than 70% of your donation, we have been able to figure out the technology to set up a mechanism for you to do so when you will go on to our coffee page. And hey, maybe because I can share a screen, I can maybe show it to you. Here, when you go on to our coffee page, where are you? Okay, there you go. I can show you that screen. Before, it used to just have an option. And why is Restream now being a little picky as we're closing? It's always as we close the show for some reason. And I do not know why it is showing a demo mic product here. Very weird. Restream is doing things on its own here. But if you, ooh, that's not particularly big. So let's see if I can scale that up for us a little bit. There you go. If you look here, before you could always do one time, now there's monthly. So you just click on that, and that way you can support us membership-wise that way instead. So again, just offering you more options here if you would like. Maybe if I can make that a little bigger because it seems really small. There you go. It's still rather relatively small and not clear, but right here, monthly. So that's where you would click and you would be able to go there. And that way, again, just more options for you to be able to make a donation that is consistent with your own values. Because I know that there's a lot of you that are doing the Buy Canadian thing and would like to support the U.S. tech firms as little as possible. So we found a way on our coffee page to help you with that as well. One way to buy completely Canadian, however, if you would like to make a transfer to support us, is to just use our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. And if you go there, Kits and Cubs, it's a direct bank transfer from Canadian Bank to Canadian Bank, and we get 100% of your donation in that instance. So 70% if you go through YouTube, 95 to 97% if you go through coffee, 100% if you go through our through your bank. Directly to our bank. So those are the options for you. And if there's any other ways that we can find to increase your options to avoid the U.S.A tech bros, we will definitely find them and put them into place. But I did find that yesterday, so I figured why not activate it. So there you go, Kids and Cubs. Always working hard to help you be able to donate your donation dollar if you have one to donate in a manner that is corresponding to your personal values and your personal ethics. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, yes, of course, Kids and Cubs, if you're not able to contribute financially, please do not worry. Use our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, to contribute in other ways, like letting us know what you think about the show, guest suggestions for the interview project, the Kids Who Cook hashtags. If you're cooking some yummy stuff, would definitely love to see what you're cooking. And if you have some good news going on, please let us share in your joy. And on that front, I believe it is Kit Elaine's birthday. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kit Elaine. Happy birthday to you. Little jazzy birthday for you. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it might be Kit Jillian's birthday soon, if I understood what was going on in the chat earlier this morning. So anybody who's celebrating, hope that all is going well. And for Kit Bucky, I hope you enjoy your trip to the Cabane à Sucre with your sweetie, and that I saw the joke there. It's the only time that it is appropriate to eat the yellow snow. So have fun, eh? Oh, I see Kid Elaine. So I was right. It is Kid Elaine's birthday. I did read that right. Yay. Okay. I hope it's a wonderful one that is filled with love and laughter and lots of happiness. May it be the most beaverific birthday yet. There you go. That's my wish from my beaver sweetie and I to you. Mwah. Lots of love. All right. Because democracy is something that you do, Kids and Cubs, remember, we have House of Commons petition E7148 sponsored by, well, not sponsored by, but Bruce Fanjoy, the member of parliament that allowed it to bring it. Well, I guess sponsored by Bruce Fanjoy and initiated by Mark Carney from Manotick, Ontario, would call upon the House of Commons to require all federal party leaders to obtain and maintain top secret security clearance, the same security clearance that Pierre Poilievre says he does not need while he is out in Europe taking photo ops, which is really interesting because he accused the Prime Minister of being there for photo ops. And I saw other people criticizing the Prime Minister's wife being on his trip out to the Middle East and Australia, saying, "Oh, another freebie for the wife," as pictures of Anita Poilievre sitting at a table talking to people in the UK was there. So that tweet actually aged very poorly prior to the fact, prior to the time it was actually posted. It was already soured before it was posted. So both leaders have brought their wives on the trip. So those of you out there wanting to spread misinformation and just wanting us to get on hate on one over the other, whatever you tried to do there failed. Just letting you know. And the leader of the opposition clearly not having meetings with anybody in government, it seems. Some leaders of the opposition and other people who might have things in their past that it appears that maybe his office did not do checks on, given that he has pictures taken with them, and he says that he's very happy to have met them. And some people are turning around going, "Did you not vet some of these people that you're meeting?" So his trip may not be going as well as he thought it would. I mean, it's going to be great for the base, I guess, if he has a meeting with Nigel Farage. Not sure that's going to win him any points in terms of broadening his appeal, which he really needs to do. So this trip of his to Europe to try and show that, look, I can Carney too, I can go to meetings too, and have people meet me, is maybe not being as successful as he had originally hoped. And might not have been as well planned as it probably needed to have been. It's starting to look a little bit more like it was a sort of more spur of the moment, okay, well, fine, we need to do this, without the planning that was required to make sure that there might not be some PR minefields that he would that he could avoid stepping into. But hey, and maybe not enough meetings and content and substance so that it didn't look like he was just traveling to get a few photo ops of his own. But hey, when you're scrambling and constantly having tonal resets and trying to shift here and there to try to look relevant, these are the things that are bound to happen. Oh well. So yes, petition E7148, ourcommons.ca. Please go there and give your signature, and please share it far and wide. We are at 38,349 signatures on that one. So let's make sure that we get all of our friends and family to sign it, because it is completely unacceptable that the leader of His Majesty's allegedly loyal opposition to not be able to be fully briefed on what it is that is in Canada's national interest before popping off at the mouth and sharing opinions. As well, we have the high-speed rail consultation. If you are affected by that in any way, kits and cubs, that's altotrain.ca/en/public consultation. It continues till March 29th, so you still have a little time left to let those conducting that exercise know what it is that you think about it. There you go. Words of wisdom, kits and cubs. Once again, breathe when you are reading statements. Again, please make sure that you're sticking to only the words in the statement and all the words in the statement, and not adding and omitting any of your own. And when other people are commenting on those statements, remember, check against the actual statement to see if the person is commenting on what was said or what the person wish was said. And again, try to remember what is indeed in the public domain and has been verified as a fact, and what is not. And beware of those that are filling in the blanks with what they wish, want, or slash need to be true for whatever they say next to be able to work, versus those who are using facts that are indeed in the public domain in order to base an assessment on those and nothing else. All right, kids and cubs, it could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, at the count of 3, may I please have the damn fam say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. On 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's a good one today. I cannot deny you, kids and cubs. And therefore, here you go. A little cock-a-doodle-doo, just for you, and a special one today for Kit Elaine. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. Yeah, there we go. A little word of congratulations, since we're talking about Canadians who make us proud. We have some world champions to talk to you about. Team Hebert won gold at the World Jur Curling Championships. It seems that Team Hebert is the gold medal winners at the 2026 World Jur Curling Championships after defeating Italy 8-6 for the title. Team Hebert representing... Oh, sorry. My mistake. I thought that was a Canadian team. That's a U.S. team. So let's scratch that. I did not research that properly enough. I just saw Team Hebert wins, and I thought Hebert, I thought French, I thought Canada, so I thought that was us. It is not us, so I apologize. My fault, my bad. So given that I didn't stick the dismount, I'm just going to say amour et bisous. And try to gracefully exit from my own stumble. Have a good day, everyone. Oops, it happened.